Lord of Mysteries, Lord of Order by Da Bai Bu Xiong. Chapter 501-525. The deepest part of the tranquil church's cliff in Winter County. Aaron, who had been directly teleported here from the Holy Hall by Pope Annabella, paused slightly, his ever-burning dark golden pupils reflecting a dark plain filled with moonflowers, night-scented grass, and deep-sleep flowers. If not for the towering palace at the very center and the crimson moon, Aaron would have almost thought he had unknowingly returned to the Evernight goddess's divine kingdom. This should be the entrance to the fourth epoc's, Deep Gloom Divine Kingdom. Even though the divine kingdom has moved to the astral world, the remaining power still created this special place. Looking at this scene, so different from the snow-covered tranquil church, Aaron's fingertips traced the air, and black threads gently swayed, carrying a terrifying aura capable of instantly putting ordinary demigods into eternal slumber. This was the product of residual divine power and solidified faith, of extremely high Beander characteristic, and also the essence of the power at the core of the sealed artifacts behind the Chinese gate in the basements of most Evernight church cathedrals. However, compared to the residual divine power here, ordinary churches outside the diocese headquarters only contained solidified divine aura and faith as their sealed artifact core, capable of suppressing Grade 1 sealed artifacts at most, but unable to withstand the backlash of Grade 0 sealed artifacts. The Eye of Order, interwoven with laws, analyzed this unique power system. Aaron nodded with interest, although he was still some distance from Sequence 0. The essence of the Nation of Disorder was now sufficient to satisfy this characteristic. With some thoughts, Aaron began to survey his surroundings. A serene darkness, a darkness devoid of any sound, replaced everything. In the darkness, where the moonflowers bloomed silently, bodies dressed in archbishop robes lay, their faces pale but serene, as if they had not died but were merely in slumber. They lay with their eyes closed in relaxation, a faint smile seemingly on their lips, and around them stood numerous gravestones, each inscribed with the same word. Guardian. Examining these bodies, which, though they had lost their Beander characteristics, still retained divine remnants, Aaron had no doubt that if any unapproved person intruded here, they would certainly be met with counterattacks from these guardians. Pope Annabella, who had been quietly hidden in the darkness, her indifferent gaze flickered slightly, and her gentle yet authoritative voice rang out. From the age of obscurity to the present, all loyal followers of the goddess, as long as their bodies remain, will forever sleep here, enjoying the peace of their souls in the Lord's divine kingdom. Amidst the rather religious chanting, the Pope passed through the gravestones and arrived at a pair of double doors embedded in the void at the deepest part of the dark plain. Following Annabella's steps closely, Aaron examined the extraordinarily heavy double doors, which were inscribed with 7 dark holy emblems, suspecting that this might have been the original blueprint when the Chinese gate was first constructed. Without giving Aaron more time to think, as if merely keeping these doors manifested consumed a great deal of power, Annabella pushed open the doors without hesitation. A chilling but not bone-piercing aura diffused, and all the spirits on the dark plain seemed to resonate, with ethereal prayers and praises gradually growing louder. As an angel who had fully digested the potion and was only a ritual away from advancing to Sequence 1, Aaron also felt as if his spirit body was being cleansed at this moment, his spirituality flowing out naturally and soothingly. Although it was only for an instant, Aaron instantly became clear, realizing that he was already in a dream. This special sensation instantly reminded him of the Ghost Empire, sealed by the Evernight goddess in the core area of the Divine War ruins, in the interstice where dreams and reality converged. Compared to the instability caused by the conflicting divine power remnants in the Divine War ruins, the seal at the entrance of the Deep Gloom Divine Kingdom was undoubtedly stronger and more concealed. Feeling that his connection with the Nation of Disorder, though obstructed, was not greatly affected, Aaron's expression remained unchanged, finding that his current location was almost identical to the palace where the Evernight goddess had appeared in the astral world. But his attention was no longer here, his gaze was fixed on the 5 towering altars at the center of the palace, where the extremely dense aura of tranquility even gave Aaron the illusion of facing the waters of the river of eternal darkness. Ignoring Aaron, whose gaze was fixed, Annabella, who had removed her triple crown and let her black hair fall smoothly, showed no papal pretense. She devoutly knelt on the ground and drew a crimson moon over her chest. Only after this, servant of concealment, rose again did Aaron slowly speak. Are these all the grade 0 sealed artifacts under the church's control? Nodding calmly, Annabella slightly raised her palm, and words condensed from starlight appeared on the surface of the 5 altars. 0 to 11. Crown of Bloodlust, a sealed artifact formed by the solidified Beander characteristic of a deep abyss pathway sequence 2 inches bloody archduke, after being eroded by high-level corruption. It has an extreme craving for flesh and blood, is extremely dangerous and unusable, and is recommended for permanent sealing. 0 to 21. Ring of Concealment, a relic left after the 3rd Evernight Pope fell during the War of 4 Emperors. After gaining recognition, short-term wear can grant the authority of a servant of concealment. Moderate danger. Note: archbishops or senior deacons above Evernight Pathway Sequence 3 can apply to use it. 0 to 24, 0 to 27, 0 to 32. Aaron's gaze swept from high to low across the altars, and his expression immediately turned strange, finding it hard to believe that the Evernight Church's foundation was only this much. Even adding the 2 angels, the divine general vessel, mother of the sky, remaining in Backland, the moon pathway uniqueness held by the goddess, and the 008 taken by Zangwill, the number of existences above the angelic Beander characteristic barely reached 10. The Evernight Church was not like the Steam Church, which only rose in the 4th epoch. As an ancient organization that experienced the great catastrophe after the demise of the ancient gods, having only this level of foundation was rather perplexing. Noticing the doubt in Aaron's eyes, Annabella explained in a calm tone. This is not everything. Some sealed artifacts that contain outer deity contamination reaching grade 0 sealed artifact level, but do not possess angelic characteristics themselves, are not suitable to remain in reality. Furthermore, the top-ranked 003, Crimson Moon, and 009, Prince of Abolition scale, are personally held by the goddess. Aaron raised an eyebrow, somewhat understanding but also surprised that the moon pathway uniqueness ranked so high. Thinking of the 005 wishing lamp, he had an idea and asked cautiously. Then what is 004? Annabella's eyes shifted slightly, and she answered concisely. The Black Emperor pathway's uniqueness, and it is not under the control of the Orthodox churches. Understanding the hint, Aaron nodded. As for 009, he could guess its essence was a Prince of Abolition characteristic without explanation. He just didn't know how the goddess managed to snatch this Russell legacy from the encirclement of the 2 true gods of Steam and Sun, and Adam. But Aaron felt that this characteristic should have been borrowed by Adam long ago, used to fuel George III's ambition to advance to a Black Emperor, fulfilling his anticipated world trend. Aside from the God of Steam and Machinery Church, which only rose in the 4th epoch, the foundations of the other Orthodox churches, even if slightly inferior to the Church of Darkness, wouldn't be too far off. Aaron pinched his brow, silently assessing the God of Combat Church's losses after losing 002. Suddenly, he felt something, and his gaze lifted through the ethereal darkness to see the gently trembling nation of disorder. Amidst the swirling dark gold mist, a miniature, somewhat insubstantial continent, centered around the abyss of ferrying, appeared within his nascent god kingdom, clearly being the kingdom of Byam rebuilt by Azek. This continent, which almost occupied a quarter of the entire eastern Byam, was like the most solid anchor, making the entire virtual god kingdom increasingly complete. Feeling the synchronized feedback from the depths of his spiritual body, a smile appeared on Aaron's face, and he moved his gaze in a good mood. The first anchor point for advancing to Hand of Order had already met his expectations. With the support of this anchor point, the Kingdom of Byam, in the God Kingdom would likely withstand the baptism of the world's rules during the advancement and successfully evolve into the entire southern continent. According to his interpretation of the blasphemy slate, and the knowledge gained from the fragments of the Night Emperor's God Kingdom, Aaron clearly understood that the process of digesting the Hand of Order Meander characteristic was essentially a continuous expansion of the nascent God kingdom, allowing its fusion with the corresponding real-world area to constantly enlarge. While anchoring himself so as not to be assimilated by the world's rules, he allowed his own order to embed itself into the world's underlying rules, transitioning from an executor of order to order itself in the true sense. Looking at Moon City, suspended in the 5 seas in Irusal, the capital of East Tark County, Aaron pondered for a moment before glancing at Annabella, who already knew about the anomaly in Eastern Biome, and pointed to the 0 to 21 ring of concealment, speaking calmly. "I'd like to temporarily borrow this sealed artifact." The High Priest of Moon City, Nim, had already advanced to sequence 3 inches Horror Bishop, and could perfectly wield the power of this Grade 0 sealed artifact, mobilizing the remaining Dark Knight divine power from the Forsaken Land of the Gods to gain the blessing of concealment, masking the anomalies Moon City would exhibit during Aaron's advancement. If not for the special identity of Mother of the Sky, even with the current status of the Nation of Disorder, Aaron wouldn't have been able to send it to the Forsaken Land of the Gods without alarming the true Creator. Otherwise, he would have preferred the more secure 0 to 17. Damaging an embedded anchor point was an irreparable injury for any Hand of Order. The example before Aaron was that of the Castia family's member. The War of Oathbreaking over 600 years ago not only caused the division of Phenopot, a dominant power in the northern continent, but more crucially, the southern continent colonies, originally belonging to Phenopot, were divided among various nations during the chaos. The anchor point, or more accurately, the most important nascent god kingdom for advancing to Justiciar, was severely damaged as a result. Divinity overwhelmed humanity, inevitably accelerating the process of assimilation by the rules. But the underlying rules of this world were inherently chaotic and mad, and the Castia families, Hand of Order, had not reappeared for 600 years because of this. As a heretic in the mouths of Celestial Worthy and God Almighty, Aaron knew that his uniqueness was not just in integrating the Nation of Disorder, but in having a soul that was unique throughout the entire universe. He was a true visitor from another world. His soul did not originate from the Primordial One, and would not face the inevitable resurgence of the most fundamental primordial imprint in his soul once he reached a certain level, unlike the ancient sun god. However, this did not mean that the erosion of rules had no effect on him. Moon City, as the first fully manifested city within the nascent god kingdom, was of self-evident importance. Without asking about the purpose of borrowing 0 to 21, the Pope's pale hand emerged from her religious robes. This peculiar world, existing in the gap between dream and reality, trembled gently. On one of the altars within it, darkness surged like a tide, enveloping a dark, ancient ring. The next second, a sense of weightlessness struck. Aaron quickly broke free from the daze, realizing he had left the dream, and also saw the ring of concealment floating before him, emitting a serene aura, seemingly illusory yet real. Praise the goddess. Aaron watched the ring of concealment voluntarily disappear into the dark night imprint, drew a crimson moon on his chest, and prayed softly. As a seasoned dreamwalker, Audrey no longer needed self-hypnosis to remain conscious in dreams, and could also generally determine the approximate level of creature whose dream she was about to enter, avoiding danger. It was precisely because of this that she was somewhat surprised to find that all the dreams she experienced this time were at the demigod level, and the last bit of Dreamwalker, Meander characteristic was rapidly digested during this process. Her emerald, gem-like eyes became even brighter, clear and luminous. Audrey pursed her lips, skillfully pushing open the door symbolizing the dream passage as before, her expression immediately turning somewhat surprised. What greeted her eyes were tarot cards scattered all over the ground, all Wheel of Fortune cards. A baby wrapped in silver silk idly tossed the tarot cards in his hand, grumbling discontentedly. "Don't worry, if that Pope hadn't allowed it, even as a mere projection, I wouldn't be able to appear here." Audrey's expression relaxed slightly, and she followed up with a curious question. "It's been a long time, Mr. Speaker. Do you know where this is?" Wei Ang Sai Ting snorted, his chubby hand propping up his not-so-obvious chin, and after a moment's thought, replied. To put it simply, this is a world formed by solidifying, preserving, and aggregating the residual dreams of the archbishops who were qualified to be buried in the Church of Tranquility over the long epochs of the Church of Darkness, through a certain special authority. Compared to the uncontrollable and extremely dangerous dream world of the God War ruins, this place is indeed more suitable for you to digest the Beyonder characteristic. No wonder there are so many demigod-level dreams. Audrey nodded with a hint of realization. Before she could continue to ask what this serpent of fate wanted with her, Aaron's familiar voice came to her ears. He's here for me. Seeing the true owner arrive, Wei Ang Sai-ting immediately complained. Last time, to help you, I've been hiding in the river of fate until now. How could I have any extra power to seal, dice of probability? But you just disappeared. If I hadn't felt Audrey's fate shift and activated the Mark I left, I wouldn't know when I could contact you. Aaron, who had specifically entered the dream after being reminded by Annabella, coughed. He had been staying in Mist Town before, and normal methods indeed couldn't reach him. At this moment, it was difficult to explain, so he just spoke slowly. Sorry, but fate is not my strong suit. What can I do for you? A cunning smile flashed and disappeared. Wei Ang Sai-ting's small face became serious as he added. You can send Bernadette to the River of Fate. I will transfer, dice of probability, to her. The scattered wheel of fortune cards around them disintegrated into specks of silver light, returning to Will Ossepton's body. After sending Audrey to other dreams, he leisurely continued, there's still at least a month until the two intertwined but unmerged fate tributaries, caused by my premature birth, can smoothly connect with the outer river of fate. This is an opportunity for Rajord to complete his ritual and advance to Sequence 3 Chaoswalker. At that time, I'll need your help. Consider it your compensation. Stopping the baby who was about to slip away, Aaron frowned. For a while, I'll be trying to advance to Hand of Order. I don't like the feeling of losing control. So, for both our matters not to be affected, you must tell me exactly what needs to be done. Advance. The baby wrapped in silver silk suddenly turned around, rubbed his eyes with his chubby arm, and stared intently at Aaron. He opened and then closed his mouth, momentarily unable to respond. After several seconds, Will Ossepton said with a slight pout, it's truly unbelievable. We've only known each other for 3 years, and you've already reached this point. Indeed, the closer it gets to the apocalypse, the more unfathomable fate becomes. After a moment of self-reflection, he composed himself and continued, although the life school of thought has suffered a great calamity, its foundation remains. I will prepare Rajord's advancement ritual and potion for him. But I sense a warning from fate. That smelly snake Ouroboros should have already left the forsaken land of the gods. It seems the pollution he suffered from the last encounter with that fellow in the abyss has almost healed, even if not completely. My current state prevents me from sparing any effort to conceal the anomaly during Rajord's advancement. Aaron nodded thoughtfully, a playful expression on his face as he followed up with a question. So, you want me to help you block a king of angels until Rajord successfully advances? Will Ossepton lightly coughed and corrected, it won't be as difficult as you say. Believe me, with my help, the time Rajord needs for advancement will be very short. You only need to spare a little time. Moreover, the fate pathway truly touches upon the authority of fate starting from Chaoswalker. If Rajord advances successfully, the dice of probability can also be handed over to him for sealing afterward, and it won't be a burden to you. Aaron pondered for a few seconds, then slowly nodded under Will Ossepton's joyful gaze. For our friendship, if I can help, I certainly won't stand idly by. However, I still have some questions I'd like to ask. Taking advantage of the ancient angel, who had lived since the second epoch, being in a good mood, Aaron directly revealed the lost history that Hermes had told him in the collective subconscious sea. Will Ossepton blinked, seemingly lost in distant memories, and after a long while, he mumbled, I'm not familiar with that old fellow Hermes, but what he said should all be true. However, the most perfect lies are often incomplete truths. You'd best confirm it again with the parties involved. Hey, you might not know, but that dragon of insight, Erhog, was killed by that Queen of Calamities back then. Aaron raised an eyebrow and nodded thoughtfully, not continuing the topic. Upon receiving the fate coordinates given by Will Osepton, he immediately left this dream world and returned to the deepest part of the Church of Tranquility. Her Eminence Annabella was no longer there. The telegram from the southern continent had just reached the Holy See, and as the Pope, she had to convene a Holy Council to respond. After all, the Church was not just one person, but a strictly organized theocratic system. The inside story of the Byron kingdom was limited to the two angels of the Church and Elia, the goddess's eye, who was responsible for the practical operations. For the rest of the archbishops, senior deacons, and the vast clergy and believers, the Holy See had to have a clear stance. Without overstepping his bounds and interfering with the internal affairs of the Church, Aaron directly transmitted the fate coordinates to Bernadette via the Nation of Disorder, then quietly sat beside Audrey, silently waiting for her to fully digest the potion. Mist Sea, Emerald City. The tall Bernadette stood by the railing, feeling the restlessness of pale death within the sealed space, and gazed towards the southern continent through the surging waves. Although she had only stayed for a moment in the outer area of Calderon City, this Level 0 sealed artifact still seemed to have been affected. The high-level power of the death domain always made it uncontrollably restless. If she wasn't already an angel, and if the most dangerous and difficult to seal, wishing lamp, had not been offered to the great Lord of Order, she probably wouldn't have had any spare energy to deal with other matters. Her eyes, as blue as the sea, suddenly turned dark gold. After a moment, Bernadette parted her lips and whispered to herself, "Dice of probability. Be careful of Ouroboros." At that moment, her eyes flickered, as if she saw something else, predicted something, and her solemn expression relaxed slightly. Bernadette pondered for a moment. Pieces of pure white, illusory feathers emerged from behind her. A part of her body then virtualized and separated, transforming into complex streams of knowledge, condensing into a pure, information flow state. Bernadette. The two Bernadettes looked at each other. The latter slightly raised her hand, and the winding, shimmering river of fate appeared. As the waves churned, it engulfed her figure. The silently flowing but insubstantial river passed by her side. Bernadette, whose essence was already an information creature, analyzed the fate coordinates granted by the Lord of Order, concealing her aura and moving against the river of fate in a certain direction. Time seemed to lose meaning in the river of fate. Bernadette suddenly stopped. A certain fate tributary, reflected in her eye of secrecy, gradually twisted, condensing into a scaleless, silver-white giant snake. Its surface was composed of dense patterns and symbols forming mysterious wheels, connecting with the surrounding illusory rivers and converging into a blurred, unreal giant wheel. Bernadette, who herself controlled the Wheel of Fortune, narrowed her eyes, secretly analyzing and absorbing the knowledge revealed by the mythological creature's form. As if sensing Bernadette's arrival, on the slowly rotating Wheel of Fortune, symbolic representations of different futures lit up one by one. An illusory light door opened, and a milky white six-sided die flew out. The illusory rivers, mixed with symbolic representations, solidified into translucent amber, firmly fixing it within, with a red 4 facing up. Before Bernadette could speak, the Ouroboros, the silver-white giant snake, abruptly vanished. Even with her current sage status, she couldn't find a trace of it. Her eyes flickered. She gave up the idea of continuing to pursue it and immediately grabbed the die, transforming into a pure information torrent and disappearing without a trace. The remaining information streams scattered in the illusory long river were churned by the whirlpool of time, completely turning into mottled specks of light and perishing. Silently, one ray of light after another seeped out of the void, forming illusory, overlapping pure wings that spread outwards, obscuring the entire tributary of fate. Beneath the covering wings, a figure with long silver hair was outlined, silently looking down at the stagnant tributary of fate. He wore a simple linen robe, his features were delicate, and his facial contours were soft. It was precisely the King of Angels, Angel of Fate, Ouroboros. His indifferent eyes were briefly unfocused, and as his gaze shifted, beneath his feet and within the overlapping light wings behind him, a series of transcendent and mysterious wheels emerged. They merged into this stopped illusory long river, making it connect end to end, and then began to rotate counterclockwise. The information torrent that had originally perished into specks of light recondensed, forming a ball of light that Ouroboros absorbed and held in his hand. The next second, this ancient angel groaned, and the ball of light in his hand suddenly expanded as if stimulated, with incredibly complex information indiscriminately eroding everything around it. A pair of indifferent, lashless eyes vaguely appeared in the light. It had no physical form, yet it seemed to be the embodiment of knowledge and information. Hidden Sage. More accurately, it was the contamination that the evil god attempted to forcibly impose through his Beander characteristic when Bernadette was promoted to sage. However, after being blocked by Aaron with the help of the Nation of Disorder, the remaining contamination was suppressed before it could be withdrawn, and was now being used as a tool to disrupt Ouroboros' tracking. Although it carried some high-level characteristics originating from the Hidden Sage, it was, after all, only residual power. Ouroboros quickly annihilated the complex information that surged into his spirit body. Looking at the tributary that had resumed flowing and merged into the entire river of fate, a shadow flashed across Ouroboros' handsome face, and the light wings behind him closed again, disappearing with him. In the southern continent, Ogallala, the largest port city on the southern plains of West Bailon, also housed Fulsac's naval base in West Bailon. Amidst the pervasive mist, a colossal vessel flying the Fulsac flag quietly docked at the already cordoned-off naval base. Governor Carter Einhorn of the Colonial District forced a smile onto his stern face, observing the Earth Mother Church's delegation, his gaze lingering on the two demigods at the forefront. One of them was a handsome man dressed in the Earth Mother Church's archbishop's robe, his highly distinctive blood-red eyes already revealing his identity. Although Carter had long known that the Earth Mother Church had subjugated some sanguine to serve as missionaries, he truly hadn't expected such an important task as establishing a diocese in the southern continent to be entrusted to a sanguine count. As for the middle-aged man beside this sanguine, who was also an iron-blooded knight like himself, Carter, having some understanding of the Earth Mother Church's internal system of blessed ones and favored ones, was not overly surprised. Despite countless thoughts swirling in his mind, Carter Einhorn showed no hint of them on his face. After a slight nod to show respect, he maintained the demeanor of a governor. His adjutant spoke at the opportune moment, respectfully and politely saying, "Welcome, esteemed guests of the Earth Mother Church. Please follow me." The governor has already demarcated the promised diocese, and the materials needed for constructing the mission are also prepared. A banquet has been prepared at the governor's mansion to welcome our esteemed guests. After a night's rest, you can depart directly by special train. Archbishop Segura, personally designated by Matron Roland to go to the southern continent, waved his hand, declining the invitation. His blood-red eyes glanced at the pure silver coffin guarded by several clerics behind him and explained, "Thank you for the governor's kindness, but we still need to seize the time to store the sealed core and build the church. Please take us directly to the special train." Even through layers of spiritual walls, Carter Einhorn still felt a strong feminine power emanating from the coffin. Although he regretted not being able to glimpse the true capabilities of the Earth Mother Church's Southern Continent delegation through this, he did not insist. Watching everyone depart, and waiting until the port returned to calm, Carter Einhorn retracted his gaze and indifferently ordered, "Secretly print the message I gave you earlier, and constantly monitor the telegrams from St. Milion. Once the war in the northern continent restarts, I need West Bailon and even the entire southern continent to know about the alliance between the Empire and Fenapot, and that the Earth Mother Church has established a diocese in West Bailon, as quickly as possible. Do you understand?" The former adjutant immediately straightened his back and, without delay, turned and disappeared into the morning light. Winter County, Serene Church. Warm and bright sunlight streamed obliquely through the stained glass windows, and Audrey's slightly curved eyelashes trembled gently as she suddenly opened her eyes. Her emerald eyes reflected the colorful sunlight, clear and lustrous, like the most brilliant gems. This is. As doubt began to rise in Audrey's mind, a familiar gentle voice came to her ears. Congratulations on fully digesting the potion. This is the resting room prepared by the Holy Hall for Red Glove members. You have been asleep for 2 days. She abruptly turned her head to look at Aaron, who was smiling, and feeling the comfort of her spirituality. Her lips couldn't help but curve up little by little, shallow dimples appearing on her cheeks, her brows slightly curved, and her eyes gently shifting. Feeling Audrey's undisguised joy, Aaron pondered for a moment before continuing. The Grand Mass at Amantha Front will be held tomorrow night. An archbishop of the church will personally preside over it, to comfort the souls lost in the war and allow the fighting soldiers to enjoy peace of mind. I have already communicated with that archbishop, and he will cooperate with you to trigger the emotional resonance of the Grand Mass at an appropriate time. That will be the best opportunity for you to complete your promotion ritual. Listening quietly, Audrey's smile gradually faded, leaving only a superficial calmness and the sorrow flowing in her eyes. Aaron sighed, clearly understanding Audrey's inner conflict. After thinking for a moment, a bottle of potion quietly appeared in his hand, floating with countless fragments of light, like a manifestation of the collective subconscious ocean. Huon Lambeth died from an abomination's curse, and his manipulator Beander characteristic had been reclaimed by Adam. The Beander characteristic from which Aaron concocted this potion originated from a giant spiritual dragon released when he helped Boyer Barlett complete the Silver Night ritual using the devil oil painting. The spiritual Jidong brought by the Jue Ben Nang immediately re-attracted Audrey's attention. Without needing an explanation, she guessed that this was the manipulator's potion. Memories of the suffering citizens amidst the great smog and the fragile lives in the face of war flashed through her mind. Audrey took a deep breath, took the potion, and whispered. Since I've chosen this path, some things are what I must bear. Mist obscured the high-hanging crimson moon, and the chaotic, ruined streets were covered in scorched marks, with broken mirrors everywhere, clinging to black flames. Panatia, whose pure white robe had turned completely to charcoal, let out a sharp shriek. The mirror world, formed by countless invisible fine threads and thick black hair coiling back, was pierced, and an uncontrollable numbness seized her entire spirit body. Opposite her, Klein, whose body was permeated by disease, turned into fragments. This was merely a paper figure clone, and the sea god scepter, its power exhausted, fell from midair, its faint blue light flickering erratically. This mystical item, originating from the remnants of Cavatua and more powerful than most Grade 1 sealed artifacts, unleashed its negative effects without reservation. Panatia's body rapidly shriveled, her blood drained, and her thoughts further solidified, interrupting her desperate urge to use her incomplete mythical creature form. The sluggishness of her thoughts became increasingly severe, and the operation of her mind grew more and more sluggish. The demoness of despair's gaze revealed obvious, intense hatred and regret, but as time passed, her expression gradually became rigid. After another moment, once the negative effects of the sea god scepter passed, Klein, who had been teleported by the traveler's marionette, reappeared. Looking at Panatia, who had been initially marionetted by spirit body threads, a smile still appeared on Klein's face, which had been extremely pale due to his spirit body being on the verge of exhaustion. Without the slightest hesitation, enduring the stinging pain in his brain, he separated a spirit worm, and transmitted it through the spirit body threads, causing Panatia to fall completely into marionettization. Only then did Klein breathe a sigh of relief. He first retrieved the sea god scepter into the eye of Rusko, hidden in his left palm, and then began to manipulate his first half-god level marionette. Panatia, now a charred mummy, opened her eyes, and her rigid posture gradually became more agile. She took out a deep, strange obsidian from her coiled black hair. Before the joy on his face could spread, Klein and Panatia simultaneously turned their heads, looking towards the relatively intact western side of the misty town, where a highly identifiable fallen malice was rushing towards them without concealment. Klein cursed under his breath. To deal with Panatia, he had used every means at his disposal, even to the point of spiritual exhaustion, so it was naturally impossible for him to contend with Mr. A at this time. Raising his hand, he retrieved the arsonist Beander characteristic from the 2 marionettes that had been scrapped in the battle. The planeswalker marionette immediately grabbed Klein and Panatia and rushed towards the central church. The terrifying spiritual threads there were, for him now, the safest place. As the faint blue light flickered, Klein reappeared at the entrance of the church, his body instantly stiffening. In his slightly enlarged pupils, the dark altar deep within the church was reflected. On the altar, which originally only had a stone carving of the Mother of the Sky statue, a figure wearing a simple linen robe with mending marks had appeared at some unknown time. Meeting those dark eyes, the sudden surge of astonishment and wariness quickly dissipated, and Klein's heart instantly became extremely peaceful and tranquil. It wasn't until the roar of fallen will came from behind him that Klein broke free from this state. Just as he was about to say something, his pupils suddenly constricted. Mr. A, who had borne the negative emotions of the entire backland and distorted into a flesh tide, more powerful than Panatia, offered no resistance. Like a toy being manipulated by a child, he was gradually erased in a bizarre manner, as if he had never appeared. The last remaining mottled light cluster, radiating strong spiritual fluctuations, was drawn by an invisible force and merged into the creeping hunger that Klein wore on his right hand. His spiritual intuition did not detect any malice directed at him, and he did not bother to investigate what changes had occurred to this mystical item. Klein's Adam's apple bobbed slightly, and with a troubled mind, he turned around and drew a crimson moon on his chest, asking in a rather complex, low voice. "You are?" The lady in the simple robe nodded gently, answering concisely. "Ariana, servant of concealment." As a Beander who originated from the Nighthawks, Klein was extremely familiar with this name. After a few seconds of silence, he bowed respectfully again. Ariana scrutinized Klein for a moment before retrieving the obsidian slab from Panatia's hand and continuing. "Your bizarro sorcerer potion has been initially digested. You can leave." Without waiting for Klein's response, she immediately placed the obsidian slab into the recess in the wall behind the altar, and a vertical eye composed of numerous hidden symbols was outlined. "This is a symbol the Antigonus family's notes once showed me." Klein had already realized something, watching the pure beams of light appear, flowing along the patterns, and finally converging. Amidst a burst of bright light, an illusory, secretive double door appeared on the wall. Muttering sounds penetrated through the long expanse of time and history, ethereal and echoing endlessly, causing Klein's spirit to waver for a moment. He only felt as if the grayish world had split open, and a towering, majestic mountain peak occupied his vision. The constantly enlarging scene finally stopped at the summit of the mountain, within the collapsed and decaying palace. On the mottled stone chair, countless transparent maggots clustered together. They were densely intertwined, slowly wriggling, and continuously growing. Fine beads of sweat instantly appeared on his forehead. Klein, having come to his senses, found himself having left the misty town and now stood on a mountaintop. In his hand, there was an additional medal, completely translucent and seemingly cast from obsidian. Without lingering to investigate, Klein immediately took his 2 marionettes and traveled through the spirit world, moving away. After confirming his safety several times in a row, he gritted his teeth and finally took 4 steps backward, connecting his spirituality to Saphira Castle. This was a destiny he could not avoid, but since the Evernight goddess allowed him to come out, at least the worst would not happen. Moreover, peering into and divining Panatia's spirit body to learn the secrets of the Great Smog still required the help of Saphira Castle. In a certain crater in the Amantha Mountains, bordering Winter County and East Chester County, soft crimson moonlight shone down. A female archbishop, dressed in a black robe with red patterns, ascended the high platform and began the grand mass, accompanied by the ethereal and melodious chanting of the choir. Suppressed sorrow and bewilderment permeated the entire crater, as if taking on a substantial form. Tens of thousands of soldiers instinctively closed their eyes, gradually pushing this atmosphere to a climax. Standing in a corner of the crater, Aaron seemed to sense something. He turned his head and gazed in a certain direction, having already detected Klein's return. Faster than I expected. Mumbling to himself, Aaron retracted his gaze. The embryonic form of his divine kingdom quietly enveloped this mountain range. Even if a problem arose during Audrey's advancement, he could intervene in time. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. As the emotional resonance reached its climax, perhaps due to the excellent ritual effect, combined with the experience of entering the collective subconscious ocean multiple times, or perhaps due to the blessing of good luck, Audrey's advancement was smooth and without any setbacks. Feeling the unique fluctuations echoing in the collective subconscious ocean, Aaron looked at Audrey, who slowly opened her eyes, and was about to speak when his brows furrowed slightly. He sensed a familiar power entering the nascent divine kingdom's embrace. Aaron relaxed the constraints of the rules, and in the void not far away, Pope Annabella of the Evernight Church emerged from her hidden state and said concisely, Fasak declared war without warning, invading Lindbergh, and their combined fleet with Forsak attacked the docks of the sea. War has restarted. The cold words echoed in this isolated space, not affecting the high mass outside, which was nearing its end. Audrey's body suddenly tensed as she used self-hypnosis to remove the pollution and reintegrate her many fragmented virtual personalities. Her face, still stained with tears, immediately showed a complex expression. As the largest port city in the docks of the sea, Connaught City had an airship hovering above it. After learning from the air raid on Backland, Lowen's entire airship fleet had been placed on war alert. The air defense standards of key coastal cities were all raised. Thanks to this, Connaught City did not suffer irreparable losses in the previous attack. Cooperate with the military and the governor's mansion to appease the public. After a brief instruction to Daly and Leonard, Dunn immediately activated Spirit World Travel and went alone to Essexon Port, the southernmost part of the docks of the sea. That was the main target of the combined Fasak and Forsak fleet's attack. Once it changed hands, not only would the docks of the sea be directly blockaded, but even the long coastline of South Wales County would fall into war. At this thought, Dunn's expression was somewhat gloomy, but a sudden, anachronistic, authoritative voice rang in his ears. Spirit World Travel is forbidden here. The colorful blocks around Dunn rapidly faded, and he was uncontrollably forced out of the spirit world. He immediately pinpointed the source of the imperative, a man in luxurious clothes with an indifferent expression. Dunn did not recognize this strange, imperative mage, but he could roughly guess that he was probably a prince or duke of the Fasak royal family. The Church of the Storms, support had arrived. Glancing at the surging tsunami not far away, Dunn's expression relaxed slightly, and he no longer held back his strength, directly taking out the death ring from his internal underworld. Above the gray fog, Klein slowly opened his eyes. Layers of whispers echoed within each spirit-body thread, almost assimilating him. Fortunately, he had already digested a good portion of the Bizarro Sorcerer potion, and the dream he had during his advancement had solidified his understanding of his own identity, allowing him to resist the erosion of divinity. Leaning back in the bronze high-backed chair, Klein wearily pinched his brow. After checking his condition, he extended his spirituality to light up the newly appeared crimson star, which was the prayer light spot formed by him manipulating Panatia to chant the fool's honorific name before returning to Saphira Castle. The image was extremely blurry. Although the perception of the spirit-body thread was extremely weak, Klein could still use that spirit-body thread to simply control Panatia to do some not-so-complex instructions, such as a simplified version of the mystical ritual. Saphira Castle is hidden in the historical gaps of the spirit world. To remotely control a puppet from here is equivalent to controlling a spirit-body thread through the spirit world and historical fog. At my current level, I can't do it at all. Although spirit-body threads won't work, a spirit-body thread is like a part of me. With this connection and Saphira Castle's status, I can simply control Panatia, who has been completely puppetized by inserting a spirit-body thread into her. After trying it out and confirming his guess, Klein began to use the mystical ritual and dream divination to review Panatia's memories, to understand the true secret of the backland Great Smog. In the hazy dream world, images flickered, many scenes flashed by, finally stopping at a deep black mausoleum engraved with twisted patterns and complex text. At the center of the mausoleum's high platform stood a black throne with a backrest extending upwards into the shape of a crown. King George III of Loan sat upon it, wearing the Balam Empire's crown, proudly looking down upon everything. The terrifying, suffocating pressure, even through Panatia's memory, made Klein feel as if he were there. This was a suppression of life levels. George III is an angel. As this thought surfaced in Klein's mind, before the shock could even rise, the dream world collapsed with a roar. Suddenly opening his eyes, Klein was stunned for a moment. After a brief contemplation, he closed his eyes and divined again, but could no longer obtain any useful information. He had encountered similar situations many times, such as 008 in Tingen City, and the sapphire ring on the demoness's hand in Backland, but without exception, these were all influenced by high-level powers. With the answer already in his heart, Klein exhaled lightly, dispelled the prayer image, and sat silently in the high-backed chair. After a long time, Klein finally got up and came to the deepest part of this gray fog space, standing at the very top of the light staircase that led to heaven. This time, his vision was no longer obstructed. He saw the brilliant door of light stained with a hint of dark green, and within the countless layers of light spheres inside, he saw the people dressed in modern clothes, sleeping. After a long silence, Klein's gaze shifted, finally stopping on the three cocoons that had already broken open, were empty inside, and swayed in the wind. Rissel, Aaron, Evernight Goddess, Lord of Order. Muttering silently in his heart, a sudden impulse surged within Klein, wanting to return directly to reality and find Aaron to question him about all the truth. But reason ultimately suppressed that impulse. Klein gave a bitter laugh, returning weakly to slump in the high-backed chair, his voice mixed with unspeakable fatigue. I still can't go back. Before this bewildered emotion could spread, Klein heard Miss Justice's slightly hurried prayer. Fasak declared war without warning, and their combined fleet with Forsak attacked the docks of the sea. War has restarted. The Holy Hall has approved Dunn Smith's promotion to Nighthawk's senior deacon, responsible for the defense of the docks of the sea diocese. Captain. Klein's originally somewhat unfocused pupils suddenly sharpened, and he immediately broke free from his wavering emotions. He took a deep breath, suppressing the chaotic thoughts in his mind, and raised his hand to summon the creeping hunger that he had brought to Saphira Castle earlier. This sealed artifact had become even more terrifying after absorbing the remnants of Mr. A, personally purified by Madame Ariana. With the seal, it could even hurt a demigod. He condensed an image and transmitted it to Miss Justice as a response, and Klein no longer hesitated, immediately returning to reality. Loan Kingdom, southernmost Ahawa County, on the banks of the Tussock River. Klein, who had returned from Saphira Castle, put on creeping hunger, and gazed upstream at the Tussock River, where Tingen City was, the place where everything began. Panatia, who was behind him, had long since recovered from her mummified state. The remaining sea god scepter pollution on this demigod-level marionette had been completely eliminated during the previous prayer ritual. The flickering black flames emitted a biting chill, rapidly condensing into a mirror surface. Klein withdrew his gaze and sketched a complex symbol on the mirror, a fusion of peeking and concealment. This place was extremely close to the Backland metropolitan area. One could even vaguely see the outline of that city of hope from afar. With a magic mirror condensed by a demigod demoness, combined with the aura of Saphira Castle, roads could be summoned. Even faster than expected, almost the moment the symbol was completely sketched, the black flame-covered mirror surface rippled outwards in circles, as if a huge stone had been thrown into a lake. Immediately following, rows of salute cannons appeared within, and colorful fireworks exploded, brilliant and beautiful, their embers forming word after word in the mirror. Welcome back, my great master. Your loyal servant erodes witnesses you reclaiming a portion of your authority and trembles at your gradually recovering aura. You shall ultimately return to that supreme position, making the entire world peaceful under your gaze. At this moment, although, magic mirror, Rhodes did not make a sound, Klein inexplicably felt as if it was shouting at the top of its lungs. Looking at the colorful text, Klein's mouth twitched. For him, who already understood part of the truth, these congratulations now seemed more like a curse. Without wasting time on boring question and answer games, even though he was anxious, Klein maintained the demeanor of a hidden existence and spoke calmly. Tell me, Dun Smith's spirit world coordinates, and all information on the demigods who participated in the Battle of Dichi Bay. Dichi Bay, Eskasen Island. The continuous roar of artillery fire was shattered by the howling hurricane. Simon Hughes, the senior exorcist of the Punishers and executioner, who arrived faster than the reinforcing Dichi fleet, stood like an insurmountable barrier in the center of the battlefield. Streaks of silver-white lightning snakes shot out from the rolling black clouds, spreading outwards with an intense, almost tangible, aura of tyrannical destruction. Although both were sea kings, unlike Jan Kortman, who guarded the Rorstad archipelago, Simon Hughes was more like an enforcer of the Church's will, an executioner of heretics who blasphemed the authority of the storm. As the primary target of the lightning storm, the commander of the joint fleet, iron-blooded knight, Yegor Einhorn, who had once destroyed Port Pritz and bombed Backland, fell from the sky in a sorry state. If not for the entire fleet sharing the damage for him, enduring such a furious blow in the Sea King's home territory would have severely injured even his physique. Decay is also a kind of rebirth. Let me cast your coffin and bring you back to the embrace of the Earth Mother. Before Simon Hughes could make another move, a devout, gentle voice, like a mother's whisper, echoed throughout the entire sea area. Under the call of the whisper, the rotting, scorched parts of the corpses scattered on Eskasen Island fell off one by one, and new flesh grew as if it had its own spirituality, with skin gradually covering this horrifying scene inch by inch. A strange yet indescribable life force, like a surging tide, forcefully tore open a gap in the Sea King's domain. A tall woman, draped in the robes of an archbishop of the Earth Mother Church, with emerald green hair loosely flowing, appeared on Eskasen Island, confronting Simon Hughes on the sea surface. Behind her, in a tide of green luminescence, were swaying, reanimated corpses with vacant and indifferent eyes. This was not the kind of resurrection where a spirit guide summoned zombies and skeletons, but a new life, with a certain will and vitality, created based on life alchemy and the authority of a pallbearer. In this unique domain, death, the end, was not eternal slumber, but the embrace of the mother, a new beginning. These, newborn, creations were like countless support points, outlining intricate and obscure array patterns on the blood-soaked island, resembling an alchemical ritual sacrificing to the earth. Once the ritual was complete, Eskasen Island would forever be devoid of life, all blessings of life would return to the embrace of the earth, and spirits would transform into evil spirits, becoming nourishment for the ritual. Instantly realizing the pallbearer's intention, Simon Hughes decisively abandoned Yegor Einhorn and unleashed his full power without any further reservations. Watching the terrifying aftershocks of the battle, Yegor Einhorn, who had retreated to the edge of the battlefield, had a fervent glint in his eyes, his desire to advance to war bishop growing even stronger. Suppressing the restless emotions in his heart, Yegor Einhorn gathered the remaining joint fleet and decisively shifted his target, intending to cooperate with the Fenipot royal family's imperative mage to first deal with the Undying supported by the Evernite Church. The god of combat Church's attack on Loan territory was originally intended to destabilize the Evernite Church's faith, thereby affecting the Evernite goddess's anchor and hindering or even interrupting the Evernite goddess's process of accommodating death's uniqueness. Although Yegor Einhorn was unaware of these secrets, which only high-ranking church officials were privy to, the fall of a Nighthawk's senior exorcist would be enough to further provoke war panic. Perhaps even before the war ended, he would have hope of advancing to war bishop. Having successfully suppressed the imperative due to the high Beander characteristic of the death ring, Dun, who had just gained a slight advantage, immediately felt an iron-blooded aura lock onto him. Without the slightest hesitation, the bronze double door at his glabella burst open, and various undying creatures, found only in the depths of the underworld, roared as they surged out, colliding with the thrown flaming spear. Amidst the sharp explosion that could pierce spirits, Yegor Einhorn, who had been poised to strike, suddenly changed his expression, feeling his connection with the surrounding fleet suddenly weaken, as if it were isolated by some power. The hunter's dangerous intuition had given no warning whatsoever. While horrified, he suddenly threw a punch forward. The previously empty void instantly cracked with fine black fissures. Under the iron-blooded knight's frantic attack, the surrounding scenery immediately shattered completely into flying mirror shards. Crimson flames rose, re-illuminating this mirror world and allowing him to pinpoint the source of the attack. Panatia. Yegor's eyes narrowed, instantly recognizing this demoness, and at the same time, he noticed that her state was extremely abnormal. She had actually become a marionette. The Evernight Church also had a bizarro sorcerer hidden. Instantly making a judgment in his heart, Yegor's face suddenly darkened. Yegor withdrew his gaze from Panatia, his eyes devoid of fear, only surging battle intent. A scorching white flame suddenly rose from his body, sweeping outwards and scorching this hazy world. As a seasoned iron-blooded knight, he decisively revealed his incomplete mythical creature form. No matter what had happened to Panatia, the mirror world she unleashed as a marionette could not compare to that of a normal demoness of despair. Even without the fleet's buffs, an iron-blooded knight's brute force could completely break through this blockade, though it would take some time. Using the shadow jump from Creeping Hunger to cut off the retreat of the imperative mage from Fenipot, Klein, who had reverted to his Gehrman Sparrow appearance, had the eye of Rusko emanating a faint glow from the bloody slit in his palm. He had just overdrawn the scepter of the sea god, and the cost of dealing with Yegor in a short time, given the physique of an iron-blooded knight, was too great. Therefore, after understanding the battle situation through erodes, Klein decisively sacrificed a portion of Panatia's divinity and made a wish to the eye of Rusko, blinding the demigod's spiritual intuition. He then used the mirror space to temporarily trap him, separating him from the army. Gehrman Sparrow. The situation was instantly reversed. Now, it was his turn to be caught between two demigods. The imperative mage of the Fenipot royal family finally showed a change in expression, clearly recognizing the mad adventurer who had been extremely famous in the Berserk Sea recently. His low voice contained suppressed fury. According to the treaty signed between the royal family and Fasak, this joint fleet's strategic surprise attack was supposed to at least destroy the effective forces of the Loan Dichi fleet, and even cut off the shipping lane between Dichi Bay and the Rorstad archipelago. But now, with the Church of Evernight's archbishops and senior deacons scattered for defense, they could still suddenly send two demigods to support Dichi Bay. Forget achieving their previous strategic objectives, even allowing this joint fleet to safely retreat to the Fog Sea would likely come at a significant cost. Although Dun, whose several abilities were forbidden, and whose posture was somewhat disheveled, was pleasantly surprised by Klein's arrival, he did not waste time on pleasantries at this moment. The open door of the underworld spewed forth a death aura that was almost solid, eroding the tottering imperatives, working in conjunction with the spirit-body threads manipulated by Klein. With a cold snort, the man in luxurious attire pressed his right hand down and said, "Mysticism here weakens, reality strengthens." As soon as his voice fell, the bronze door immediately became illusory, and the continuous stream of spirit world creatures and dense death aura began to dissipate uncontrollably. Having gained a moment of respite, he forcibly broke free from the spirit-body threads that sought to control him. After falling into a disadvantage in the clash of demigod-level powers, he unhesitatingly amplified his own advantages, ordering the retreating joint fleet to turn their cannons. Boom, boom, boom. Cannons roared madly, sending shells trailing red or faint blue light whistling through the air. But in the next second, these shells were swallowed by the surging, spreading dark clouds. The two saints confronting each other on Eskozan Island seemed to have determined a victor. His spiritual intuition pulsed violently. Before he could react, Klein and Dunn were caught off guard and sent flying by a force. The residual power, like maggots on bone, devoured their life force. After transferring the damage to his marionette, Klein noticed that the imperative mage's figure had long since vanished, and the spreading dark clouds had completely enveloped the entire sea at this moment. Frowning, Klein stopped Dunn, who still wanted to pursue, and after nodding at the massive face formed by dark clouds in the sky, he sensed the spirit-body threads extending into the void. The faint sound of shattering was extremely small amidst the booming thunder. A scorching white flame spear pierced through the void, and Panadia's once again charred body fell. Before the arrogant and ruthless expression on Yegor's face could fully spread, he felt 3 extremely oppressive gazes fall upon him. Winter County, Serenity Cathedral. What a surging tide of the times. Aaron put down the telegram he had just sorted, muttering with an inexplicable tone. The entire northern continent, except for Intis which was still wavering, was almost completely drawn into the war. The local advantage in Dichi Bay could not conceal Loan's overall disadvantage. Dichi County and Civilis County in the north, located at the border of the 3 nations, were continuously suffering losses. Especially the latter, which was Loan's concentrated area for heavy industry and mineral resources. Once it fell, if the supply from the southern continent was also affected, Loan's war potential would continuously drain away. The colonial areas in the southern continent can be stirred up. A sense of urgency flashed in his mind. Aaron pondered for a moment, then his figure silently vanished, returning to the nation of disorder. Dense, dark gold mist gathered on his body, transforming into an intricate, luxurious, yet majestic armor. The 9-layered crown of the same color emitted a twisted sensation of coexisting chaos and order. Feeling the intoxicating power, Aaron took a deep breath, and the slight sense of urgency dissipated. He checked on the lamp god, who was feigning death in self-isolation. After confirming that the previous seal had not been quietly tampered with, Aaron then lit up the prayer points of Moon City's High Priest Nim and Cavendish Lancer, and took out 0 to 21, the ring of concealment, placing it into the dark gold double door formed by the former. The entire palace gently shook. In the boundless dark gold world, the illusory, Moon City, visibly accelerated its rate of swallowing and exhaling dark gold mist. Forsaken land of the gods, a certain mountain range north of the Abyss Passage. Cavendish Lancer, holding a beast skin lantern, stopped and listened to the majestic voice echoing in his mind. To evade the tracking of the Saint Word Angel Stiff, he had stayed in this desolate land for several months, simultaneously collecting Beander characteristics that could be utilized and attempting to find traces of the gloomy demonic Wolf Kotar, who had escaped last time. When the voice in his mind completely dissipated, Cavendish Lancer's expression became blank. Only a historical projection remained here. He had already returned to the historical fog. Half a forsaken land of the gods away, on the easternmost side of the barrier formed by grayish-white mist, in the central square of Moon City, High Priest Nim flipped the illusory starry book in his hand, using the record ability. He raised his hand and grabbed, trying several times before pulling out Cavendish Lancer's historical projection. Almost the instant he emerged from the historical fog, his eyes regained their vitality. He glanced at the 4 demigods behind Nim, 2 of whom were iron-blooded knights whose spirituality had not yet fully converged, clearly having just advanced recently. Cavendish Lancer nodded in satisfaction, not finding this too surprising. After all, one of the characteristics was obtained by him while sweeping through the forsaken land of the gods, and the iron-blooded knight's advancement ritual was indeed very suitable for the current Moon City. Without wasting time, while retracting his gaze, using the special anchor point of the historical projection, he spoke in a deep voice, making a wish to himself. I wish for my true body to return to Moon City right now. The next second, the mottled fragments deposited deep within the mists of history flickered, and Cavendish Lancer, as a miracle invoker, fulfilled his wish. High Priest Nim's expression relaxed slightly. The spiritual consumption maintaining the angel's projection had ceased. He immediately bowed respectfully and said, Your Excellency, Divine Emissary. After erasing the traces in the mists of history, leaving only some misleading information to avoid possible tracking, Cavendish Lancer nodded with a smile, came to the high priest's side, and together, with the help of the altar, opened the door of bestowal. The mysterious door formed by candlelight opened, and the void darkness behind the door seemed to gain substance, like an invisible barrier, hindering some power exceeding the limit from entering the forsaken land of the gods. But with a miracle invoker's coordination from both inside and out, this already precarious barrier instantly disintegrated. An ancient-looking ring, like obsidian, flew out from the boundless darkness and landed on the altar. As a quiet and peaceful aura permeated the air, Cavendish Lancer and High Priest Nim, who were closest to the altar, had all the information about this sealed artifact, designated as Zero Level, appear in their minds. 021 feet Ring of Secrecy. Watching the ring float before him, drawn by the aura, High Priest Nim reverently and respectfully took it, feeling a deep spiritual yearning, and slowly put it on his right hand. Suddenly, a pure darkness, completely different from the dangerous darkness of the forsaken land of the gods, surged like a tide, emanating from High Priest Nim's body and enveloping the entire Moon City. The residents of Moon City, whose appearances had all returned to normal with the help of the miracle invoker, looked up, either bewildered or surprised, to find that the sky, which had always been shrouded in darkness and only occasionally illuminated by faint silver lightning, had disappeared. In its place was a giant and sacred red moon. The thin mist, illuminated by the crimson moonlight, looked like a thin veil, vaguely revealing a collapsed ancient architectural complex. Nim, who was in some sense a vessel for the power, found his spirituality uncontrollably consumed by 0 to 21, with the consumption even exceeding that of maintaining Cavendish Lancer's historical projection earlier. Although a horror bishop's spirituality is considered relatively high among the sequence 3 of many pathways. However, he is not like a scholar of yore, who has the unreasonable ability to borrow spirituality from his past self. If the current state is maintained without combat, without external assistance, perhaps a quarter of an hour would be a relatively safe usage period. As he was thinking this, Nim inadvertently looked up, and his body suddenly stiffened. That sacred red moon, which seemed to have no other abnormalities in the eyes of the other residents of Moon City, seemed to flicker, as if some indescribable existence blinked and cast its gaze upon him. Even though there was no malice in it, the absolute suppression from a higher life level still gave Nim a sense of powerlessness, like being a weakling on the edge of a cliff. Fortunately, this feeling came and went quickly, and with it, the original heavy spiritual burden also disappeared. Cavendish Lancer's expression was slightly moved. Just now, he almost lost contact with the marionettes remaining in other areas of the forsaken land of the gods. Could this level of ability mean that the hidden world of the previous Evernight Pope, who died in the War of 4 Emperors, was preserved in this sealed artifact formed by the convergence of its characteristics? So, a recognized, horror bishop, of the Evernight Church, or even a slightly weaker, Nightwatcher, can briefly awaken this zero-level sealed artifact, which possesses living characteristics, and use angel-level authority at the smallest cost. I just don't know how long Nim can last. With his complete mythical creature status and angel-level divination, Cavendish Lancer had roughly grasped the essence of this zero-level sealed artifact's ability. He looked at High Priest Nim, who had reopened his eyes, his pupils and entire eyeballs replaced by deep black, and asked carefully, "How do you feel? How long can you maintain this state?" Recovering from his dazed state, Nim remained silent for a moment with a strange expression, then finally responded, "I can't be sure, but it should be for a very long time. If I only maintain this state." Looking at the divine emissary, who was slightly frowning, Nim smiled bitterly and continued to explain, "I think I already know what happened. This zero-level sealed artifact originally consumed my spirituality to maintain itself, but now there is another higher-level power that has replaced my spirituality. It's the scattered residual divine power of the Evernight Goddess in the forsaken land of the gods. Cavendish Lancer's brows relaxed in understanding, and he also understood why that great existence specifically wanted to borrow this zero-level sealed artifact from the Evernight Church. Given the current situation of Moon City, or more precisely, the environment of the Forsaken Land of the Gods, this zero-level sealed artifact is like an engine with an inexhaustible supply of fuel. The only thing that needs attention is that a large accumulation and continuous disappearance of the Evernight Goddess's residual divine power in the Forsaken Land of the Gods would very easily attract the attention of the true Creator. Nim, who also understood this principle, decisively stopped the attempt and proactively integrated his spirituality into 0 to 21. He had originally expected to put in some effort, but to Nim's surprise, this zero-level sealed artifact, which possessed living characteristics, was so docile that it hardly deserved its designation. After his spirituality expressed the intention to stop, it proactively retracted the secret kingdom that enveloped Moon City. The darkness receded like a tide, leaving only a faint, tranquil aura. Nim carefully took off the ring and placed it in a pouch made of a demigod-level monster's fur, which he carried with him. He would carry this divine gift with him and protect it with his life. In the Nation of Disorder, Aaron leaned back in his chair, waving his hand to dispel the prayer seen under his true vision. He had witnessed the entire experiment in Moon City. In terms of effect alone, it had met his original expectations, and he also felt the gaze cast by the Evernight Goddess through that zero-level sealed artifact. Although she had not accommodated the uniqueness of the death pathway, the Evernight Goddess could already influence the death pathway to a limited extent. Coupled with her own hidden authority and that zero-level sealed artifact, it was enough to exert a certain influence on the Forsaken Land of the Gods. At least, when he attempts to advance, the safety of Moon City will be guaranteed. Aaron pondered for a moment, then raised his hand to summon the Chaotic Crown, which was essentially the last copy of the Sequence 1-foot Hand of Order characteristic. The moment Aaron's gaze met the crimson gold eyeball embedded in its top, this terrifying sealed artifact, formed by the Night Emperor personally stripping away his own Sequence 1 characteristic, began to tremble violently. It seemed to sense its impending fate. The already cracked crimson gold eyeball instantly surged with golden threads, carrying a chilling majesty. The entire world, enveloped in dark golden mist, trembled slightly, but Aaron, within his own domain, was almost equivalent to a complete king of angels, possessing absolute suppression over the Black Emperor and Justiciar pathways, stemming from his unique status and essence. As Aaron pressed his hands down, the Chaos Crown's final resistance became meaningless, transforming into a peculiar light composed of countless tiny light clusters with a booming sound that vibrated the spirit body, emitting an invisible and terrifying cohesive force. Controlling the almost instinctive urge from deep within his spirit body, Aaron resisted the idea of integrating the brilliant light cluster, woven from laws, into the nascent form of his godhood, which was stirring restlessly. Without complete assurance, doing so would only increase his burden. Similar to sealing the truncest brass book, Aaron separately sealed this completely shattered and extremely pure Hand of Order characteristic, waiting only for the opportune moment of the ritual to prepare the potion. Aaron took a deep breath, shifted his gaze, and raised his hand to illuminate the prayer star symbolizing Alvin Gallo. At the junction of the Hornichus Mountains and the northern continent's central plateau, deep within a 100-mile stretch of black hills, a vast surge of yin power transformed into a pair of illusory, misty, gigantic bat wings inscribed with numerous mysterious symbols, forming a gateway. A colossal ship, entirely black, inscribed with obscure patterns, and more than 10 times the size of a Loan ironclad, sailed out of the suddenly expanding gateway. It was none other than the Ghost Empire, which had been concealed within the Nation of the Moon. As a soul-piercing chill wind blew, Alvin Gallo, whose body was entwined with wicked vines and thorns, clasped his right hand together, and the surrounding space was immediately replaced by a colorful abstract oil painting. It was only upon fully entering the spirit world that his body suddenly expanded, and the door of rebirth emerged from his splitting torso. Nearly 100 Truncest Royal Guard undead of middle sequence and above emerged from the deep black vortex, skillfully moving to each anchor point of the Ghost Empire, devoutly chanting the honored name of the Order Master. His scarlet eyes flickered slightly. Alvin Gallo looked up at the 7 distinct colors of clear light, containing infinite knowledge, located above the spirit world, no longer suppressing the thoughts in his heart. As a high-ranking spirit world creature, the safest and most convenient way for him to find the 7 lights in the spirit world was not through secret prayer rituals or by risking chanting their honored names. Given Alvin Gallo's status, as long as he had the intention to visit and prepared to act upon it, corresponding information would inevitably be generated, allowing the 7 lights, who in some sense controlled the spirit world, to perceive it and make a prediction. Even shorter than expected, one distinct light after another rose around Alvin Gallo, transforming into different elderly figures. Leading them was a majestic elder in a long crimson robe. He nodded steadily and introduced himself kindly. "I am the Red Light, El Moria. We are already aware of your purpose. We will do our utmost to assist the existence behind you, and in return, we hope that existence can help the great ruler above the spirit world return as much as possible." A thin, dark golden mist appeared before his eyes, and Alvin Gallo slowly spoke after a few seconds. "This is our consensus, the Great Order Master will not go back on his promise to you." The 7 lights of the spirit world, dressed in robes of various colors, exchanged glances and nodded simultaneously. The 7 clear lights at the very top of the spirit world then burst forth with dazzling brilliance, enveloping the Ghost Empire and spreading to other areas of the spirit world. In Iriseel, the capital of East Tarok County, deep beneath the ancestral tower, in a hall covered with coppery rust, a strong aura of iron and blood, accompanied by a terrifying, almost tangible pressure, erupted. Varna, with red hair and brown eyes, dressed in classical full-body armor, suddenly stood up. He felt that the spirit world of East Tarok County was being stirred by some high-level power. Although the disturbance was significant, he did not feel any substantial danger warning. Varna first ruled out the idea of a Fosak coalition sneak attack on East Tarok County. Just as he was pondering whether this was a test by some interested party, a familiar and majestic voice emerged in his ear, relaxing his expression. After a few seconds of contemplation, a tarot card appeared in Varna's hand. Rosal Gustav, wearing a crimson priestly robe, raised his scepter and pointed upwards, where the starlight condensed into a line of text. Sequence 0. Red Priest. The moment this blasphemy card appeared, the iron and blood aura in the entire underground hall intensified further, and an even stronger sense of majesty emerged than before. A peculiar crown covered in rust and bloodstains appeared on Varna's head. Divine runes protruded beneath his feet, and the law-array patterns personally left by the Night Emperor, which had been thoroughly refined from the half-crippled weather warlock in Bansi Port, had quietly activated. After briefly suppressing Tudor's remnant will, Varna, who could barely use some of the Conqueror's authority, immediately acted, resonating with the power in the spirit world. As the stronghold of the East Taker family, Iriseel had already broken free from the control of Augustus's Hand of Order during the War of Betrayal. Coupled with the chaotic concealment of the spirit world, there was no need to worry about being traced back to the source in a short period. Within the nation of disorder, boundless dark golden mist surged. Aaron had already left the magnificent palace standing at the world's center, observing the many fulcrums that supported the almost real nascent godhood. Moon City, Ghost Empire, Iriseel, Lloyd City, Barum Kingdom, Rashad Island. Excluding Moon City, which was isolated in the forsaken land of the gods and could act without restraint, his faith in the real world could only develop secretly. The direct consequence was that his unique order was only implemented in a very limited area. To meet the advancement requirements of the Hand of Order and integrate the nascent godhood with the corresponding real-world areas, he could only resort to cunning methods. That is, by using the angels who believed in the Order Master as fulcrums, their anchors as grip points, and the spirit world interwoven with reality as a medium, to radiate and influence the corresponding entire area. Suppressing his increasingly scattered thoughts, Aaron decisively manifested his complete mythical creature form, overlooking the entire world, and began to actively interfere with and influence reality. The complete nascent godhood was divided into several parts, centered around various fulcrums. Under Aaron's manipulation, it transformed into pure light and merged into the prayer stars symbolizing the various angels. His will also split into several parts with the division of the godhood, and the surging dark golden mist condensed into numerous three-dimensional, layered mysterious symbols. They traversed higher levels, connected to underlying rules, and visually represented abstract concepts such as order, rules, power, and knowledge. The entire nation of disorder began to tremble slightly, the terrifying pollution originating from the Sephira, enough to make a true god frown, now served as the most solid anchor connecting to reality, supporting the consciousness contained within the divine kingdom that had merged into reality. Layered whispers accompanied by chaotic images surged in, and Aaron felt his consciousness sharply elevate, finally intertwining into a vast, deep, and boundless cosmos. Various abstract concepts and symbols were intuitively displayed within his consciousness, clearer than any previous entry into the astral world. To some extent, this transformation would only passively occur after consuming the sequence 1-inch hand of order, the Yander potion. But with the deep integration with the nation of disorder, even in the outside world, he still possessed a status comparable to a sequence 1, lacking only the Beyander characteristic to utilize the corresponding authority. Although the special symbiotic relationship with the Sephira required him to have more anchors during advancement, conversely, the most essential and crucial part of the ritual, integrating his own order into the underlying rules to create the prototype of his divine kingdom, was the easiest to complete. Within the slightly vast nation of disorder, the dark gold mist surged again, recondensing into a blurry giant figure, and Aaron, whose consciousness had returned, relaxed his restraints. A brilliant light source interwoven with laws, carrying several shattered auxiliary materials, flew out from the magnificent palace and instantly disappeared into his body. An invisible wave, carrying an increasingly vast aura, diffused outwards, and the wishing lamp suppressed deep within the nation of disorder also trembled slightly in response, with viscous golden flames flickering on its cracked body. Backland, downstream of the Tussock River, relic number 1, the deep black, majestic secret mausoleum was enveloped by a curtain woven from shadows, like a complete, independent world. Within this world, the default processes and rules seemed to be disturbed and distorted. If one was not recognized, even true sight could not discern the correct direction, and every step forward might lead to an unknown place. George III rose from the massive black throne, his body was already shrouded in a grayish shadow, transforming towards the order of shadow, in a state of balance. Even with the help of the Twilight Hermit Order, George III had to pay a price to secretly advance to Sequence 1 and gain the qualification to become a Black Emperor under the watchful eyes of the three major churches. The 9 secret mausoleums inherited from Tudor and subsequently repaired were crucial for maintaining his current state, preventing him from completely detaching from reality and becoming entirely part of the Order of Shadow. As long as he endured and waited for the opportunity to ascend to godhood, even if there were hidden dangers, there would be opportunities to compensate, just like the former god of craftsmen. The dark black spurred crown on his head swayed slightly, and George III's expression was indifferent as he felt the countless prayers coming from his ears. This crown, originating from the Balaam Empire, was an important medium that linked the name, George III, with the title of emperor. Unfortunately, the remnants of Bahram ultimately resurrected, which would somewhat affect the future ritual's effectiveness. At the very bottom of the black high platform, 2 woven angels appeared behind Pauli Delau, the head of the psychology alchemists, who was seated in a black wheelchair, smoothing out the pressure from the Prince of Abolition. Only then did he hand over the crown shrouded in dim light. That lord asked me to give you this Black Emperor uniqueness. The tide of the era is surging, and you don't have much time left. His gold-embroidered black robe billowed, and the stagnant atmosphere relaxed. A rare flicker of greed and longing flashed in George III's placid eyes as he looked at the crown adorned with numerous dim gems in his hand. After a long silence, he slowly spoke. I had thought Adam would come personally, but the current situation should align with the world trend he hopes for. To ensure I can successfully complete the ritual and ascend to godhood, fulfilling my agreement with him, please tell Adam that I still need the help of the Twilight Hermit Order. Slowly nodding, Pauli Delau responded in a gentle voice. I will convey your thoughts. The echo lingered, and the figure of this dream weaver had already disintegrated into pure light particles, vanishing without a trace. Not rushing to crush this uniqueness, which had been sealed by Adam, and concoct it into a Beander potion, George III manipulated the conceptualized body he had left in Sadrak Palace to formally sign the declaration of war against the Fanapotter Kingdom and the resurrected Barum Kingdom in the South Continent. Suddenly, his expression drastically changed, and the entire relic number 1 trembled slightly, as if a giant wave had suddenly risen in the void ocean constructed from the order of shadow, and an invisible, even ethereal, aura flashed by in an instant. This is someone advancing to Hand of Order. George III recalled the Ghost Empire that had flashed in the core area of the Divine Battle Relic earlier, and the mysterious figure who had advanced to Balancer almost simultaneously. A hint of apprehension flashed across his stern and dignified face. The last Hand of Order characteristic, the remnant of Truncest. It was a pity that he was not someone who had steadily digested Beander potions step by step to reach his current status. Under the surveillance of the major churches, he could only rely on cunning methods to balance divinity and anchors. To maintain this balance, his power range was still limited to the areas near the 9 major relics. Otherwise, with his current status as a top-tier king of angels, he could directly twist order and reverse lock that secretive Truncest remnant based solely on the recent rule anomaly. However, what made him uneasy, even somewhat apprehensive, was that the aura of this newly advanced Hand of Order was mixed with some higher-level power, causing the dormant Black Emperor uniqueness in his hand to become restless. A deep light gathered bit by bit, condensing into a majestic figure beside George III in the dim air. It was William Augustus I, the founder and protector of LotM, and its first king. As one of the great nobles of the Fourth Epoch, this ancient angel was clearly among the small group who had seen the second blasphemy slate. Obscure patterns flashed in his golden pupils, and he used the dense twisted order of the Black Emperor pathway in this place to peer into the disturbed underlying rules. In the ethereal, William Augustus I seemed to see an unspeakable, magnificent world. Before he could investigate further, an incredibly vast power instantly severed the consciousness that had spread along a twisted order to its source. William Augustus I's body trembled slightly, and a thin, dark gold mist seeped from his eyes. After a long silence, he muttered with an unidentifiable tone. Nation of disorder, a Sephira being controlled. Or is it an anomaly like the hidden sage that has developed consciousness? The shadowy order covering his body spread and enveloped the crown, inlaid with many dark gems, in his hand. With the help of the distorted rules within the No. 1 ruin, George III reinforced and extended the seal left by Adam. Given his current state, the most feasible way to accommodate the Black Emperor uniqueness was to follow Adam's trend of the times and hold a ritual to directly attempt to advance to sequence 0. Before that, this uniqueness was a burden, not an aid, to the current George III. Forcibly using it would only break the balance he was barely maintaining. His gaze swept over William Augustus I, who stood still in thought, not attempting to continue his prying. George III spoke indifferently. Sequence 0 of both the Black Emperor and Justiciar pathways are vacant. Even those fellows in the astral world cannot control that Sephira, and even avoid it. Within the barrier, the only one with the ability and status to do this is probably the ancient sun god, who fell in that ancient era. The indifferent voice echoing throughout the silent mausoleum paused slightly. George III looked up at the sky, seemingly seeing through the barrier to the cosmos. It now seems that the barrier in the cosmos is already on the verge of collapse. A certain outer god has successfully exerted influence on that Sephira, and the remnants of Truncest are clearly one of the outer god's pawns. This will cause unpredictable changes to our plan, but it is not entirely a bad thing. At least in the matter of resisting the outer gods, we can win over more allies and prevent those few wavering existences from continuing to obstruct us in the dark. William Augustus I nodded slightly, noncommittally, and added in a majestic voice. The god of combat church's defeat on Sonia Island must have been planned by them. Such strength, coupled with the stolen, truncest brass book, is no less a threat than the hidden sage. However, compared to us, the one in Fasak is truly on pins and needles. The god of combat church should also react. With the apocalypse approaching, everyone is going crazy in their own way. In the astral world, which was more abstract than the spirit world and seemed to encompass all authority and symbols of the entire universe, a peculiar kingdom woven from various books was embedded. A phantom tower, almost occupying the entire world and extending to the end of the sky, stood tall. Each layer of this indescribable giant tower was composed of illusory books, and brass-colored eyes filled its body. The higher the layer, the darker it became, and the more it was filled with madness and destruction. Almost at the same time as Aaron's successful advancement and the change in the underlying rules of the real world, tiny brass-colored specks of light swiftly moved through this world, outlining mysterious symbols one after another, finally forming an omniscient eye at the top of the giant tower. Jagged ripples flashed through its profound pupils, seemingly interpreting the vague and abstract prophecy with the omniscient authority. After a brief silence, only a slightly vicissitude sigh lingered. Southwest of Issyk, the capital of Luan, the headquarters of the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom, the Knowledge Sanctuary. At the center of the palace complex, which blended the grandeur of classicism with a sense of historical weight, the towering Tower of Wisdom trembled gently. An old man in a pure white robe embroidered with gold patterns devoutly knelt on the ground. The golden triple crown on his head symbolized his identity, His Holiness Troff, the Pope who had governed the Knowledge Sanctuary for nearly 1,000 years. After the magnificent will in his mind receded, Troff slowly rose. After comforting the many bewildered clergy members in the Knowledge Sanctuary, his figure distorted, instantly dyed with brilliant starlight, becoming extremely illusory, as if transforming into a stargate. This was a planeswalker transforming himself into a symbolic representation to effectively utilize the abilities of the astral world, originating from Troff's analysis and simulation of an Abraham family angel in the fourth epoch. Clusters of condensed crimson fireballs, led by a flaming javelin, passed over a place full of corpses, weapons, blood, and smoke, landing in the dilapidated city and creating a series of explosions. Both sides in the fierce battle had already gone berserk. The chilling, iron-blooded aura could not be weakened even by the imperative mages, mystical weakening, reality strengthening, imperative. Instead, it grew thicker amidst the hoarse and noisy sounds of slaughter. The dense aura of calamity was like the most vicious pollution, silently spreading under the catalysis of slaughter, eroding everyone on this battlefield. Bali Delau, the president of the Psychology Alchemists, sat in a black wheelchair, looking indifferently at this Asura field, yet he did not stop spreading mental plague in this ocean of collective subconscious, making this flesh grinder operate even more cruelly. The one who came here was clearly not a virtual personality, but his true body, who had just arrived from Backland by crossing the collective subconscious ocean with the help of Eden. Only in this way could the current effect be achieved, with demigods present on both sides of the Seeger-Luan allied forces and the Fasak army. This was another instruction Bali Delau received from Adam, besides delivering the Black Emperor uniqueness to George III. This is a necessary sacrifice. Bali Delau glanced at the tragedy he had personally orchestrated, then calmly took out a silver crucifix pendant from his arms and whispered a chant. This creation, originating from the angel of imagination, suddenly expanded, absorbing the calamity and slaughter of the entire battlefield, turning into a 100-meter-tall crucifix. A blurry blood-colored figure suddenly raised its hand. Amidst the sudden, insane, and terrifying roars, the dim sky became exceptionally chaotic, as if two isolated worlds were gradually merging. Tornadoes, as if from another world, raged, carrying flames, lightning, and hail, colliding with the imagined figure condensed from the aura of calamity. The sharp explosions could not conceal the piercing, arrogant laughter within. Crimson or dark purple flames emerged from the vibrating spatial cracks, forming a human figure. This figure wore black, blood-stained armor and had shoulder-length fiery red hair, looking young and handsome. The flag-like blood-colored mark on his brow seemed to come alive, greedily devouring the residual aura of disaster. It was the Red Angel evil spirit, Sauron Einhorn Medici. Behind him, the gradually closing spatial rift was forcibly propped open by black tentacles, each with an eyeball at its tip, resembling pythons. And just as the power of the primordial demoness, following the Red Angel evil spirit, was about to penetrate reality at the last moment, it was blocked by a scorched banner stained with mottled blood. As the grayish-white spread rapidly, black flames, large enough to cover half the sky, flickered indistinctly behind the rift like an indescribable monster, their ends twisting and splitting into python-like black tentacles that furiously slapped the mottled blood-stained banner blocking the rift. Medici, clad in blood-stained black armor, wore a grotesque smile on his face, which was covered in dark red, almost black, patterns. The banner-like bloody mark on his glabella spread with black and red patterns, surging towards his palm. The 2 to 3 meter tall iron-black metal pole he clutched tightly in his hands seemed to come alive, gluttonously devouring the pervasive, almost solidified, bloody, rusty scent that filled the entire battlefield. On the scorched banner hanging from the top of the pole, the dark red, almost black, bloodstains became increasingly vivid, as if they had just been taken out of a bloodbath. The ground, which had turned into a bloody Shira field, disintegrated without warning, and continuous swaths of deep purple flames surged from within, moving towards Medici in the sky. Countless severed arms and limbs dissolved in the flames, fostering an even denser aura of calamity, and heads, each dragging a blood-stained, pale white spine, appeared, growing, from the fiery tide. They were densely packed, seemingly real yet illusory. Tens of thousands of gazes all fell upon the black flame monster behind the rift, venting its fury. Medici, in a move that harmed him more than his enemy, actively triggered the imprint of the City of Calamity to activate this uniqueness of the Red Priest pathway. The primordial demoness, who was merely a power projection and not a true divine descent, became uncontrollably rigid on the spot. Silently, worms of time surged from the surrounding void, transforming into Aemon, wearing a pointed soft hat. This angel of time first glanced at Pauli Derlau, who was lurking in the collective unconscious sea, then a smile curled on his lips as he raised his hand and pinched the crystal monocle on his right eye. The next second, a terrifying, blazing surge of light burst forth instantly. The entire battlefield, and even the surrounding mountains and wilderness, were filled with pure, scorching sunlight. Daylight temporarily replaced the overcast sky that covered the entire area. These were the daylight Aemon had stolen from the god's battlefield ruins, and it was one of his gains besides the second blasphemy slate. Facing such daylight, without any defenses, even Pauli Derlau, lurking in the collective unconscious sea, seemed to have the illusion that his spirit body was melting. The most terrifying part was the insane murmurs echoing in his ears, like steel needles piercing into his subconscious island. This caused his consciousness to be consumed by immense pain, and the many identities woven and separated by the Dream Weaver also began to be affected, spreading contamination like a plague. The daylight from the god's battlefield ruins not only contained terrifying, purifying power but was also filled with murmurs originating from the true creator. And the latter was the most terrifying for high-level individuals of the spectator pathway. As the saying goes, a doctor struggles to cure himself. Once the corrupted murmurs from a true god invaded the island of the mind, it would not be possible to eliminate the contamination by simply abandoning a few virtual personalities. But the next moment, Pauli Derlau's chaotic consciousness suddenly cleared, and he stared in astonishment at another, Pauli Derlau, beside him, which had been completely infiltrated by pitch black ink. This was an imagined body created to receive the contamination. On the somewhat desolate island of the mind, which had been ravaged once, the atom, originally only woven by Pauli Durlau with the authority of the Dream Weaver, had his hollow eyes replaced by an ancient wisdom, calmly observing the gradually extinguishing daylight. A piercing shriek that penetrated the spirit body completely shattered the already crumbling daylight, and the sky was once again enveloped by a storm. Aemon, with half his body covered in pale white, observed with interest the abstract painting covered in starlight in his hand. It was precisely that Grade 0 sealed artifact formed from the skin of the primordial demoness, mixed with a portion of the planeswalker characteristic, and it was also the source that allowed that power projection to be maintained. The black spatial rift healed, and the black tentacles, losing their support and gradually disintegrating, were forever left in that place of exile. Glancing at Medici, whose aura was becoming increasingly terrifying, the grayish-white on Amon's body gradually receded. He raised his hand and made a grasping motion, and a quietly burning, brilliant spark of fire peeled off from the abstract painting. Quite satisfied with this sequence 2 planeswalker characteristic, a faint light passed over his monocle. Aemon seemed to have discovered something interesting, and the smile on his lips widened. He then vanished without a trace, taking with him this human skin originating from the primordial demoness. Medici at this moment had no time to bother with Aemon, his playful expression turned ferocious and terrifying. His body had clearly become a new battlefield. The daylight, filled with the true creator's murmurs, completely activated the second blasphemy slate integrated into Medici's body. As the most devout angel of war, of the Lord who created all, the omnipotent and omniscient God, he finally heard the Lord's gospel again after a millennium. Chaotic light erupted, and a dusty, mottled, and rather ancient-looking slate emerged from within Medici's body, resisting the banner-like imprint that was almost coming alive. A curtain of shadow, stretching from the sky to the earth, silently appeared. After absorbing this blasphemy slate, a pair of indifferent eyes that watched the entire world opened. After a slight pause on atom deep within the collective unconscious sea, they immediately transformed into a giant cross that was between reality and illusion. A blurred figure was hanging upside down there, with several ancient wooden stakes piercing his body. The blood dripping downward stained the red priest uniqueness, the flag of Godfall, which Medici held in his hand. The shadow curtain behind the giant cross then split open, revealing a dark, lightless interior where the sound of illusory tides echoed. One could vaguely see an boundless sea that seemed to encompass all colors and all possibilities. An immense power instantly gained an overwhelming advantage. The strange dark red, almost black, patterns on Medici's body gradually faded, and the boundless aura of calamity was sucked into that boundless sea. The flag of Godfall, soaked in the blood dripping from the cross, trembled slightly. The blood-colored patterns writhed as if alive, carrying terrifying pollution and the residual wool of madness, beginning to separate from this terrifying sealed artifact formed by the uniqueness, returning to the blurred figure hanging upside down on the cross. The hanged man, who bore all sins and evils, dissipated with the gradually fading murmurs. On the dilapidated ground, Medici held the now calm flag of Godfall, kneeling on one knee, just as he did during pilgrimages in ancient eras. And before him, the second blasphemy slate, whose power was overdrawn, had lost all its luster, but it seemed to clearly sense that this relic of the ancient sun god had undergone some kind of change. A faint, hazy glow emerged from the void, enveloping the space, and symbolic constructs formed from basic particle structures converged to create a miniature starry gate. Amidst illusory creaking sounds, the brilliant portal collapsed inward. Through the revealed gap, in the vast cosmos, a pair of brass-colored eyes emerged. Around the brass-colored eyes, eyelashes sprouted, transforming into wings that obscured the cosmos behind them. A faint light swept across the indifferent pupils. It gazed at the second blasphemy slate and Godfall banner, suspended before Medici, and deep within its eyes, an illusory tower made of stacked books appeared, instantly enveloping the former. And just as the starry gate appeared, an ancient, mottled stone clock phantom silently emerged. Its face was divided into 12 asymmetrical sections by gray-white and dark green, each section bearing different symbols representing different times. Dong. Without the slightest hesitation, one of the 3 pointers at the core of the stone clock twitched, and the entire space became stagnant, like a suddenly frozen image. Aemon, wearing a pointed soft hat and a classical mage's robe, reappeared at some unknown moment, having already arrived beside the illusory tower. He raised his right hand, adjusted his crystal monocle, and reached for the blasphemy slate, which was held in place. Immediately, brass-colored eyes appeared on the stacked books forming the tower, instantly seeing through the bug Aemon had created and turning it to their own use, freezing the outstretched arm in place. "Just a joke, tisk tisk, you're as boring as ever," he commented with a frivolous tone. Then Aemon, enveloped by the tower, showed no discouragement at his failure. He shrugged indifferently, and his figure, like a faded abstract painting, finally transformed into a dull worm of time. The brass-colored eyes, gazing intently, showed no emotional fluctuations. They had long seen through the essence of this Aemon and had no intention of using the medium to teach Aemon a lesson, as it would be meaningless for a blasphemer. Amidst the flashing light, the second blasphemy slate and the 12-section worm of time vanished with the illusory tower into the gradually closing starry gate. Medici slowly rose, looking at the Godfall banner in his hand expressionlessly. A curve appeared at the corner of his mouth, like self-mockery or a challenge, then he transformed into pure purple light and swept towards the sky. In the gradually calming collective subconscious sea, Adam, dressed in a simple white robe, whether he had anticipated it or had extinguished his own emotions, watched the entire process with gentle serenity, like a pure outsider. He neither offered assistance nor obstructed the slate. This was the tacit understanding after compromise, and even more, the necessary price for an equivalent exchange. Silently, the eyes of this, woven, Adam became hollow again. Only then did Pauli Delau withdraw his thoughts from that great battle, and his gaze became unprecedentedly fervent. As a high-level being in the spiritual domain, who had separated into numerous identities, he had not experienced emotions of desire or even greed for hundreds of years. This was the innate pursuit of a higher life form by the spiritual body. Soon, as long as that Lord ascends to godhood, I will be able to become a complete mythical creature in the tide of the new era. A slightly fanatical voice echoed on the spiritual island. Pauli Delau's figure, along with the 2 woven angel projections, dispersed into pure light particles and merged into the surrounding floating, light and shadow sea water. The forsaken land of the gods, Moon City, shrouded in shadows. A dark golden halo rose, spreading and permeating through the obscure, dark buildings, finally covering every resident of Moon City, dispelling the remaining corruption within their bodies. The rules of this ancient city-state, which had continued for over 1,000 years, quietly changed. The power mixed in the darkness was dispelled. Even if not covered by light, it would not disappear into the darkness. Rich spiritual fluctuations emanated, and many Moon City residents could clearly feel the Beander potion within them strangely digesting on its own, which almost overturned their inherent understanding. As time passed, these changes in low-sequence Beanders finally manifested in the demigods of the Elder Council. High Priest Nim's expression subtly changed. The ring of concealment in his hand flickered erratically. Even he, who was closest to the angelic rank, felt the horror Bishop Beander potion rapidly digesting. Part of this stemmed from using the ring of concealment, which itself was an advanced acting of the servant of concealment, thus also providing positive feedback for the digestion of the horror Bishop Beander potion. The other part was a reason he could not comprehend, seemingly a change in some rule. Perhaps this was a miracle. The nation of concealment, covering the entire Moon City had not been lifted, but Nim could already feel an indescribable gaze cast from a mysterious place. Standing beside him, Cavendish Lancer, as a miracle invoker, felt it even more intensely, his expression somewhat dazed. As a chosen spark among Truncest's personal guard to be preserved for future generations, he had seen that great existence who founded the empire. Just now, he even had the illusion of the Night Emperor's return. The surrounding Moon City residents looked excited. At the same time, They clasped their hands together, bowed their heads, and prayed with more devotion than ever before. Praise be to you, great Lord of Order. Boundless dark golden mist enveloped a miniature, almost real world. The magnificent palace that originally stood at the center of the world had disappeared, replaced by pillars extending to the sky, like celestial pillars supporting the entire world. At the end of the celestial pillars, directly above the miniature world, a dark emperor wearing a 9-layered crown and with his face completely replaced by a mass of dark golden mist, had endless chains of order extending from his back, connecting reality and illusion. Countless illusory voices emerged from the chains of order. They mixed with real praises, allowing Aaron's will to gradually return from the chaotic underlying rules. Only at this moment did he truly become sequence one hand of order, gaining more dominance in the fusion with the nation of disorder. Within this Sephira, the power he could mobilize was already close to the limit of a king of angels, and he could also use certain authorities of the Black Emperor pathway. Moreover, for him, who was already truly embedded in the world's underlying rules, his power would not be weakened by being in reality. Now, he could be considered truly unafraid of those two creators' children, possessing the confidence to overturn the table. Suppressing his somewhat restless emotions, Aaron grabbed the wishing lamp, its surface covered in cracks, from the churning dark golden mist. Ignoring the lamp spirit's curses, immense power surged into it. Using the special connection between the nation of disorder and the lamp spirit, Aaron, who forcibly twisted and set new rules, seemed to see a mountain range shrouded in mist. This seems to be the border area between the Honachus Mountains and the Intersea in the northern continent, but there seems to be a fundamental difference. Feeling that rather familiar sense of blurriness and distortion, Aaron's eyebrows slightly raised, and he immediately understood that this was the amplification of chaos in the underlying rules, which then affected its integration with reality. That mountain range had already formed a special place, and similar but not identical areas included the Death Mausoleum in the Raging Sea and the God War ruins in the Sonya Sea. Nodding thoughtfully, Aaron confirmed he had found his intended target, sensing that peculiar place intertwined with reality yet out of place, and directly used the Hand of Order's power through a medium to make a mark on the underlying rules. Before he could continue his investigation, the wishing lamp, which had been pliable, suddenly emitted golden mist, and the strange valley in the consciousness medium abruptly rose with an all-obscuring mist, the medium's direction forcibly altered. The dark gold mist covering his body rippled, Aaron frowned, and immense power instantly suppressed the unruly lamp spirit. But the consciousness image filled with mist did not dissipate, a power originating from the nation of disorder, utilizing a loophole in the rules, prevented the medium from being interrupted. His expression quickly turned solemn. Considering that he had just advanced to Hand of Order and still needed some time to stabilize his state, Aaron abandoned his somewhat risky probing idea and immediately acted with full force, directly sealing all mediums between the nation of disorder and the outside world. The Truncest brass book flew out from the dark gold mist. After advancing to Hand of Order, he no longer worried about this uniqueness completely animating. He wrote with his hand like a pen below the series of silvery words. Without permission, no existence shall establish contact with the nation of disorder in any form. As the dark gold mist, imbued with Aaron's spiritual imprint, surged in, the Truncest brass book unfurled in midair, resonating with the entire dark gold world. The originally stable image immediately began to tremble. Before the loophole in the order was filled, a planet shrouded in white mist appeared at the last moment. It seemed to sense the gaze from the ethereal realm, like waking from a deep dream. Dense, shifting white mist instantly permeated, and an indescribable sound echoed in the cosmos behind it, vastly different and more profound and eerie than the astral world. Even though the source was isolated, the mere power that permeated caused the entire nation of disorder to undergo an anomaly, like water boiling to its peak. Vast power, like boiling steam, self-activated, converging into a torrent, gradually grinding away the whispers attached to the illusory nation. After repeatedly confirming no residual contamination, the nation of disorder finally returned to peace. Aaron looked at the white vortex, gathered in his hand and swirling with mist, his expression grave. He admitted that he had been a bit overconfident. Even with the King of Angels' authority and complete control over the nation of disorder, a nearly crippled outer god was not something he could handle at present. Fortunately, his reaction was decisive enough. Coupled with the protection of the Primordial One's barrier, only a portion of the power had permeated, which was still within the manageable range. Looking at the wishing lamp that was playing dead again, Aaron no longer wasted words and directly isolated and sealed it. After a moment of thought, he redirected his gaze to the miniature world below. Before the Primordial One's barrier was completely shattered, compared to the threat of the outer god, George III's impending shock for the Black Emperor's godhood was the most pressing issue he faced. Compared to LotM, who had held the uniqueness for thousands of years without progress, he at least had a clear goal and could attempt to accommodate the Truncest brass book with a simplified god-making ritual combined with the nation of disorder. And George III was the best, even the only, choice. For him now, the primary task was to quickly digest the Hand of Order potion and make his divinity sufficient to bear the uniqueness. With this thought, Aaron recalled the condition he had promised LotM and, with a slight movement of his mind, lit up the brilliant star symbolizing Bernadette in the sky above. Mist Sea, Rashad Island, Emerald Palace. The tall Bernadette stood behind the railing, her illusory eye of secrecy suspended high, thoughtfully examining the quietly changing order on the island, absorbing knowledge related to rules. The next second, her brows slightly furrowed, and her azure eyes suddenly became deep and distant, looking at the sky where the warm sun hung high, as if piercing through reality to glimpse the contracting and expanding gray-white planet in the desolate cosmos. Skillfully stripping away the contaminated information flow within her body, Bernadette heard a majestic voice, which gradually relaxed her tightly furrowed brows. A moment later, the thin dark gold mist dissipated, and around Bernadette, peach blossoms instantly fell, vibrant and colorful. As if an invisible door had opened, a peach forest, lush with vegetation and blooming flowers, appeared before her eyes, cut off by the mountain at the end of the water source in the forest, only able to try to extend out from a small cave. Taking a step, Bernadette's figure disappeared into that seemingly unreal, water-flowing cave. The core area of the vibrant peach forest was already filled with and gradually decaying from death's aura, and even feathered serpent down began to grow on the weathered ground. And the source of the death's aura was a metallic lustered pale mask. The mask only had holes for the eyes, with no other seams, and it was precisely pale death. An illusory river, mixed with symbolic patterns, encircled a milky white six-sided die, firmly fixing it beneath the mask. After being influenced by Calderon, this level 0 sealed artifact, whose essence was sequence 1-inch pale emperor, became even more terrifying and bizarre. Within its range, not only would the concept of death itself wither and vanish, but it even exhibited partial authority over the decay of all things. To a certain extent, it could suppress the continued animation of the dice of probability, but as a price, pale death, which had already undergone unknown changes, would also be gradually awakened. Pure white, illusory feathers emerged from behind her. Bernadette pondered for a moment, then took out the Wheel of Fortune card. The shimmering river of destiny coiled within this mystery reappearance, space, converging with the illusory river surrounding the dice of probability. Taking the milky white die, which had recoalesced into amber and was firmly sealed, into her palm, Bernadette quickly arranged the ritual and sacrificed pale death, whose facial contours on the mask were becoming increasingly clear, to the Lord of Order. Watching the thick, mottled dark gold double door slowly close, Bernadette, after grinding away the remaining decaying and corrupting aura, did not linger. She transformed into a pure information torrent, enveloping the dice of probability, and disappeared into the rippling river of destiny. In the boundless dark gold world, the profound void gradually closed, and a mask, its metal luster faded and already mutated into a human face, flew out from the eye sockets, which burned with pale flames. The human face on the mask had distinct southern continent features, with decaying patterns from which grew one white feather after another, stained with light yellow grease, emitting an aura of decaying stillness. Aaron recognized him. It was Azek Egger's father, the death of the fourth epoch, the underworld emperor Salinger. And almost at the moment of entering the Nation of Disorder, this terrifying sealed artifact formed from the pale emperor characteristic completely activated. The expression on the human face was no longer rigid and frozen, and the inherent pollution burst forth. A low roar emanated from within the mask, and the lowest part of the illusory world within the Nation of Disorder, the deep blue space formed by condensing a portion of the underworld's authority, trembled slightly. As the controller of the divine kingdom, Aaron directly saw a river of eternal darkness flowing in the void, and saw the pale giant pillars on both sides of it and countless blurry figures lingering at the edges of its tributaries. The illusory tide stirred the gray-white mist that enveloped it, and a huge figure flickered in and out of sight within it, but it could not break through the invisible shackles no matter what. Accompanying the abruptly stopped roar, the Nation of Disorder returned to tranquility. Aaron looked at pale death, which had been violently destroyed and completely turned into pure light points, and immediately modified the rules within the divine kingdom, accelerating the condensation of Beyonder characteristics. An invisible barrier emerged, completely separating the pure Beyonder characteristic from the pollution mixed within it. The latter also gradually converged to form an illusory human-faced feathered serpent, like a miniature version of the artificial death in the Death's Mausoleum. After Salinger accommodated the uniqueness, his own death imprint would also become unique and remain forever in the river of eternal darkness. The hidden hand he left within this characteristic was, in nature, more akin to the negative personality produced by the dragon of imagination being influenced by the Chaos Sea. However, this separated consciousness also mutated after the main body fell, and did not merge with Azek at that time as Salinger had envisioned. Furthermore, it would integrate the death pathway's uniqueness, becoming an incomplete death, and with the help of the death imprint returning to the river of eternal darkness, truly leverage and even initially control this Sephira. The golden patterns deep within his eyes gradually dimmed. Aaron, who had completely analyzed the essence of this illusory feathered serpent, curved his lips. He did not completely obliterate it, but instead sealed and isolated it using the authority of the Hand of Order. After properly placing the recondensed, pale emperor, characteristic and a death consul, characteristic separated from it, he slowly stood up, stirring the surrounding mist, and his figure disappeared within it. In the Daisy Bay, the smoke of war was dispersed by the sea breeze, leaving only the ruins of the port, demonstrating the cruelty of war. Senior Deacon of the Punishers, Executioner, Simon Hughes, glanced at the dying iron-blooded knight Einhorn, who was enveloped by disease and death. He didn't say much, shifting his gaze to Klein, who was disguised as Gehrman Sparrow. After scrutinizing him for a moment, he turned back to Dunn, whose face was somewhat pale, and his voice, like muffled thunder, rang out. Even as a demigod, and even with the underworld within you, it should be difficult for you to forcibly commune with spirits. However, given this fellow's position in the Fasak military, you should be able to obtain a lot of valuable intelligence. The combined forces of Fasak and Fenipot also suffered significant losses. I will personally guard this place. You can take Einhorn and use spirit world traversal to return to the quiet church first. Streams of spirit body threads emerged from his body. In front of a Sea King, Klein had no intention of hiding his identity as a bizarro sorcerer. After initially turning the severely wounded Einhorn into a marionette to prevent this iron-blooded knight from fighting to the death, he exchanged glances with Dunn, and they both nodded simultaneously. After learning some secrets in the foggy town, Klein, on the contrary, felt a sense of calm, as if he had too many debts to worry about. Knowing that he wouldn't be arrested in judgment as a heretic, he felt more curiosity and longing for that holy hall that only existed in telegrams and ancient texts. An agreement was quickly reached. Klein followed behind Dunn, manipulating the stiff-faced Einhorn, who disappeared into the colorful oil painting. Skipping over the abstract color blocks, Dunn, who was walking ahead, suddenly thought of something and stopped. Under Klein's somewhat puzzled gaze, bronze light surged from between his eyebrows, and the illusory door of the underworld opened, from which flew out a green-tinged door-shaped characteristic and a note. After you disappeared back then, that marionette withered uncontrollably. Rather than giving it to the druid who was with you, it's better to exchange it for something more useful to you. This is Ludwell's Beander characteristic. I have already claimed the £55,000 bounty from the governor's mansion and deposited it into an anonymous account at Backland Bank. The note contains the account number and the corresponding cipher. £55,000. Klein's eyes widened slightly, almost turning into the shape of gold coins. Meeting his captain's slightly teasing gaze, he smiled with rare shyness, pushing back the gatekeeper characteristic and only taking the note. Standing on the ruins, Simon Hughes thoughtfully withdrew his gaze from the gradually fading space, pondered for a moment, and instructed the bishop beside him. Immediately send a telegram to the Holy Hall, reporting the situation in Daisy Bay, and also inform His Holiness the Pope that the Beander of the seer pathway secretly cultivated by the Church of Evernight has already crossed the threshold of a demigod. In North Borough, Backland, the Allen family's home was filled with joyous sounds, and the festive atmosphere dispelled the gloom brought by the resumption of war. A lovely, exquisitely carved infant, blinking its round, clear eyes and sucking its finger, was placed in a delicate crib by his mother after being baptized by the clergy of the Church of Evernight. The clamor faded, and silver-white patterns emerged, preventing his own destiny from interacting with the outside world. Richard, the Fate Senator, who was invisibly hidden in a unique way, emerged from the shadows of the corner, leaning on a translucent scepter. It was one of the foundations of the Fate Council, a sealed artifact formed from the Sequence 3 Chaoswalker characteristic. Will Ossepton smacked his lips, just about to say something, when his eyes suddenly widened, and he looked at the suddenly appearing Aaron as if he had seen a ghost. Feeling the oppressive sensation similar to, and even stronger than, Ouroboros, he opened his mouth and whispered in disbelief. You've advanced to King of Angels. Looking at the shocked Will Ossepton, Aaron took out an amulet made with a yesterday reappearance charm and placed it in the baby carriage, saying in a teasing tone. Didn't I tell you before that I was planning to advance soon? But it's good that I didn't miss Mr. Speaker's birth. This is a gift for you. Choked by those words, Will Ossepton, lying in the stroller, mumbled after a long while. Recently, means these past few days. How did the promotion to Sequence 1 end so easily for you? Fate is truly unfair to me. As if remembering some sad past, tears welled up in the chubby baby's eyes. He picked up the amulet made from the yesterday's reappearance charm, sniffled a little, and after glancing at it, grumbled, so ugly. Without waiting for Aaron to speak further, he sniffled and said to Rachel, who stood not far away, eyes tightly shut and somewhat at a loss. It's fine, you can open your eyes here, no need to worry about backlash. It just so happens that he's here, so I won't have to waste my power to shatter that sealed artifact for you. Aaron smiled, looking at the translucent scepter floating before him. He didn't refuse, and with a virtual grip of his right hand, he directly separated this space from the outside, with light particles flying and a dull cracking sound. After being promoted to Hand of Order, he could now perfectly control and restrain the authority and symbols of the Nation of Disorder, neither allowing Rachel to see what he shouldn't, nor letting George III and William I of Backland sense his arrival. Playing with the amulet, which was even larger than his palm, Will Ossepton shifted into a comfortable position. After observing Aaron for a moment, he quietly continued to mumble. Promoting so quickly, I didn't expect your humanity to be maintained so well. Aaron handed the re-aggregated Chaoswalker characteristic to the somewhat reserved Rachel. He smiled at the words and didn't explain, only quipped. Isn't this good? Will Ossepton pouted, suppressing a scoff that almost escaped, and glanced at the surprised Rachel. Rachel, having received the pure characteristic, immediately understood. After bowing to the two angels, he directly began to concoct the potion. It had been 100 years since he achieved Misfortune Mage, and he had finally awaited the opportunity for promotion. The amulet gradually became transparent, merging into his palm as a stream of light. Will Osepton lightly coughed, his expression becoming serious again. Since you have already been promoted, Ouroboros is up to you. Also, there's one more thing you might find interesting. As his voice fell, Aaron felt a familiar power dragging his spirit body. With a slight thought, his consciousness spread, and a hazy dream world appeared. The vague, abstract, and unspecific images gradually became clear, settling on the rapidly spreading gray-white. Medici, clad in blood-stained black armor, raised the mottled blood banner in his hand, a sinister smile on his face covered with deep red, almost black, patterns. When I completed the restart and successfully descended, I sensed the fluctuations of the river of fate. Using the moment I returned to my peak, I attempted to glimpse this scene. The slightly childish, serious voice drifted away with the disintegration of the image. Aaron frowned slightly, asking with some uncertainty. Is that Salinger's blood banner sealed in the Church of Knowledge? Will Osepton, who had personally experienced the Pale Disaster at the end of the Fourth Epoch, and even witnessed the fall of the Underworld Emperor, nodded with a solemn expression. After a moment of thought, he reminded. For the seven deities, whether it's to deal with the approaching apocalypse or to deal with the primordial demoness, tacitly allowing or even supporting a red priest, whose pathway is not adjacent to their own is an acceptable option. Clearly, someone has placed a bet, otherwise, with Medici's state, it would be impossible for him to obtain 001 on his own. Also, don't forget that the blasphemer knows that the conqueror characteristic is in your hands. Aaron slowly nodded after a moment of silence. He had no intention of summoning Erodes to inquire, as the relevant information must have been concealed by a higher power. A thin, dark golden mist appeared before his eyes, and Bernadette's prayer could be heard in Aaron's ears. Suppressing the chaotic thoughts in his mind, he spoke. Bernadette has already arrived at the divine battleground ruins with the dice of probability, and is prepared. I can now fulfill the request I promised you earlier. A smile immediately appeared on Will Osepton's chubby face. He spread his hand, and a drop of silver blood, with countless tiny, illusory wheels rotating within it, flew towards the visibly excited Rachel, who was instructed. This is the fate I intercepted using my umbilical cord blood as a medium when I was born. Only when it returns to the river of fate can my two intertwined but unmerged fate tributaries successfully connect with the outside river of fate. And this is also your opportunity to advance to Chaoswalker. Pay attention to comprehending the essence of fate, it will greatly help you with the digestion of your future potions. After speaking, Will Osepton then looked at Aaron, who was staring at his palm, selectively ignoring the blatant gaze before clearing his throat. I trouble Duke Aaron to bring him to the divine battleground ruins. I will also keep an eye on things. The time for yesterday's reappearance is limited, so I will only act when necessary. Guessing the rarity of this umbilical cord blood, unlike ordinary mythical creature blood, Aaron glanced at the relieved Will Osepton, abandoning the idea of taking advantage of the situation, and directly disappeared from the bedroom with Rachel. Traveling through the colorful spirit world, Dunn stopped in front of a dark world, turning back to explain to Klein. Ahead is the spirit world area corresponding to the cathedral. Entering without permission could very likely lead to silently disappearing. Before he could finish speaking, he saw a metal quietly appear in front of Klein. It exuded a tranquil aura, was entirely crystalline and transparent, and seemed to be cast from obsidian. The next second, the dark spirit world area ahead suddenly rippled, like surging tides, instantly engulfing the two people and one puppet. When they came to their senses, they were already in a grand hall, surrounded by darkness, blurring distance and boundaries. Feeling the silent, peaceful atmosphere, Klein, whose spirituality gave no warning, held his breath, looking at the only light in the night sky like darkness, a magnificent statue that seemed to come from a high-hanging red moon or the stars. Countless shimmering points adorned the layered yet not complex, dark black gown, as if the cosmos night sky were draped over it. The head was indistinct, as if covered by a veil of night. Feeling the tremor of his spirit body threads, Klein's gaze shifted to the base of the statue. There was a female figure wearing religious robes and a triple crown, currently placing her hand on the head of Yegor Einhorn, who was undergoing initial puppetry. Her other hand held the medal that Miss Ariana had given them earlier. No further words were needed to explain, the iconic attire was enough to signify her status. Klein's lips moved, and a name arose in his mind. Annabella, the goddess's favored one, Her Holiness the Pope of the Church. Even though Klein had mentally prepared himself when he decided to follow the captain to the cathedral, his body still trembled when he met those dark, deep eyes. This was a suppression originating from a higher life level. The only comforting thing was that his perception of Saphira Castle was not blocked as it had been in Foggy Town. Returning the faintly glowing medal to the bizarro sorcerer, who was favored by the goddess, Annabella's surrounding darkness surged, pushing the somewhat dazed Dunn out of the main hall before she slowly spoke. The war in the Amantha Mountains is intense, gathering many demigods. If used well, it can help you quickly digest the bizarro sorcerer potion. However, it is also very dangerous. If the Fasak military or the god of combat's church intervenes, I might not be able to act at a crucial moment. You must control this balance yourself. Additionally, Zeratul has returned to normal. Keep this medal safe, it can provide you with secrecies, blessing when facing the Hermit Order. Zeratul. Almost the instant he heard that name, Klein held his breath. The sense of relaxation he had felt after advancing to demigod instantly vanished. In his chaotic thoughts, the words he had been pondering suddenly became difficult to utter. Withdrawing her gaze from Klein, Annabella gently lifted her hand, and above the head of the Fasak military demigod, a slightly blurred soul of Yegor Einhorn emerged. Innumerable black threads, as if alive, surged from the surrounding darkness, coiling around the soul. In just a few breaths, the resentful and terrified expression on Yegor Einhorn's ethereal face completely turned blank. Annabella's eyes slightly lowered as she perused the information obtained through forced spirit channeling. A moment later, she nodded gently, pressing her hand down to release the drained soul back. Having regained control over the puppet, Klein immediately split off a spirit body thread, completely puppeting Yegor Einhorn. After a moment of hesitation, he still asked, "Your Holiness, do you know that George III has actually advanced to an angel?" Her indifferent expression showed no change. Annabella remained silent for a few seconds, then suddenly asked, "Do you have enough evidence to convince the two popes of the Church of Storms and the Church of Steam?" Klein opened his mouth but did not respond. He couldn't possibly take the puppet Panadia off Saphira Castle in front of the Pope. And during his last spirit channeling divination using Saphira Castle, the most crucial information had already been erased. Moreover, in the current situation where Loan was engulfed in war, even if the Loan royal family bypassed the three great covenants signed in ancient times, even the most volatile Church of Storms would probably not turn hostile at this moment. Sighing inwardly, Klein no longer dwelled on this question and instead asked, "Your Holiness, how can I obtain the subsequent potion formulas for the seer pathway?" The figure draped in religious robes and wearing a triple crown vanished into the darkness, leaving only an echoing voice. Accumulate enough merits, or offer equivalent items to the goddess, requesting a bestowal. Outside the Sonia Sea safe passage, the entrance to the Divine War ruins. Aaron emerged from the spirit world with Rachod, and not far behind them was the storm that seemed to connect heaven and earth. Below their feet was a massive chasm where the azure seawater was severed, cascading like a waterfall into the bottomless abyss, yet never filling it. Under the illumination of silver-white lightning flashes, dense torrential rain danced with the wind, creating a scene like the end of the world, yet it silently vanished upon approach. Feeling the familiar chaotic order, Aaron's thoughts stirred, and he instantly arrived inside the Divine War ruins. Here, the daylight, along with the true Creator's murmurs mixed within it, had been stolen by Aemon, breaking the already precariously maintained balance. Night had almost enveloped the entire Golden Ocean. Following behind Aaron, the power contained within the darkness did not affect Rachod. He also noticed pure light flickering in the darkness not far away, like a night sky adorned with stars. The next second, the Stars converged, forming Bernadette's figure. The dice of probability, wrapped in amber, in her hand was much calmer due to the influence of the residual divine power in the surroundings. Her eye of mystery suddenly stung. Feeling the oppressive sensation that approached that of the hidden sage, Bernadette's azure pupils slightly contracted, and after a second of delay, she bowed. Noticing Bernadette's change in expression, Aaron didn't pay much attention. After shielding Raychode's hearing, he directly spoke in a majestic and grand voice. When this matter is concluded, I will take you to see Russell once. You can personally witness his predicament. And to help him escape his predicament, to truly solve the problem, he can only accept another contamination of the same level and more compatible with him, forming a certain balance, such as the nation of disorder. Even those few in the astral world cannot accomplish this. Only I, after ascending to godhood, will have the ability to free Russell. Looking at the slightly moved Bernadette, Aaron paused and added, George III should only be missing the final ritual of godhood to become the Black Emperor. Although the exact time cannot be determined, it will certainly be during this war that has swept across the entire world. Once a new Black Emperor is born, Russell will lose everything, just like Solomon in the fourth epic. Bernadette had no hesitation, even showing a rare eagerness. Do you know where he is? What else do I need to do? Waving his hand, Aaron calmly explained. In the Fog Sea, within his last mausoleum. That place has been eroded by the power of an outer god, which is why Russell, though not truly dead, has never returned through the special means of the Black Emperor. The Pale Death, sealed artifact you previously offered, I have completely shattered. This sealed artifact will be temporarily used by me. In exchange, I will try to help you advance to the Knowledge Emperor later. And now, first help Raychode advance. Will Osepton will act if necessary. Taking a deep breath to suppress the thoughts in her heart, Bernadette nodded. Her body disintegrated into a pure stream of information, carrying the dice of probability, and rushing into the depths of the divine war ruins, stirring the tributaries of the river of fate with the chaotic residual divine power. From Raychode's body, which had been shielded from perception, a drop of silver blood with countless tiny, illusory rotating wheels now flew out, instantly transforming into a blood-colored membrane that enveloped his entire body, carrying him into the shimmering silver-white long river. Two distinctly different destinies collided and merged at this moment, and Raychode simultaneously swallowed the Chaoswalker potion. No longer paying attention to Raychode, Aaron connected to the Nation of Disorder, using the imprint left behind when he previously advanced to Balancer there, attempting to activate the conflicting residual divine power in the core area, preparing a surprise for Ouroboros. Ripples spread across the sea surface, and large swaths of rich golden light rolled and expanded within the water, making the surroundings even more scorching, resisting the encroaching night. This special place, formed from the blood of the ancient sun god, remained unshakable even after the erosion of time. Even the power atom extracted the last time he dealt with the mother tree of desire did not fundamentally affect it. Is this the power of an outer deity, or even one approaching pillar status? Having achieved the hand of order and further assimilated the nation of disorder, Aaron, who was comparable to a king of angels, gained more insights than when he had just advanced to Balancer. Instead of confronting that immense power, Aaron mobilized the power of the nation of disorder to block the encroaching influence of the surrounding golden ocean, then connected with the shattered and chaotic underlying order of this divine battle relic. Shadows flickered in his dark golden eyes, finally settling on a magnificent structure filled with a sense of epic and myth. One side of the building was a spire, the other a round tower, flanking a central grand hall predominantly gray-blue, covered with symmetrical symbols, emblems, and patterns. Compared to it, the Twilight Giant Hall in St. Milan seemed utterly unremarkable. Giant King's Court. This name surfaced in his mind, and Aaron used the Eye of Order to pinpoint this ancient place hidden amidst numerous chaotic divine powers and fragmented orders. Symbols flickering with light and shadow flowed, and Aaron's gaze followed them, finally stopping at a pitch-black hole on the left side of the massive gate. Behind the door was the sleeping place of Dark Angel Saucerer, the left hand of God, the vice-monarch of heaven, who controlled the first, blasphemy slate, and whose current state was a matter of great concern. Aaron's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't actually intend to take out the key to the giant king's court he had obtained from Iceberg Admiral Edwina. Although this great door would certainly be opened, the initiative of when and by whom it was opened remained in his hands. At the very least, it was a bargaining chip he could use to negotiate with the true creator for the safe departure of the Moon City residents from the forsaken land of the gods. After weighing the pros and cons in his mind, Aaron still left a portion of his consciousness to constantly monitor the giant king's court, as the true creator's divine kingdom was located in the forsaken land of the gods, almost adjacent to the giant king's court. At such a distance, even if the 7 gods had sealed off the forsaken land of the gods, they couldn't stop the true creator if he wanted to act. At most, he would retreat back to the forsaken land of the gods after acting, and with the apocalypse approaching, the various beings in the astral world wouldn't likely engage in a major conflict with him. At the same time, the illusory silver-colored long river surged, this solidified uniqueness constantly attempting to break free from its physical constraints and revert to a conceptual form symbolizing authority. Bernadette paid little attention to Aaron's actions, her entire focus concentrated on the divided information torrent, suppressing the restless dice of probability. Only she, having displayed her complete mythical creature form, could use the information torrent to stop the conceptualization of the dice of probability and gather those ethereal concepts. This act, akin to raising a torch in the dark, instantly covered the convergence of Will Osepton's 2 destinies and Richhead's advancement fluctuations through it, but almost simultaneously, it attracted uninvited guests. One after another, lights formed illusory, layered, pure wings, appearing abruptly and spreading outwards, almost covering the entire river of destiny and extending downstream. Countless branching streams of destiny were gathered, and numerous future possibilities for a period of time were converged, becoming a predetermined future, as envisioned. At the center, surrounded by silver-white brilliance, a tall, thin man with long silver hair stood silently, his indifferent pupils containing only rotating silver rings. The tail swallower, angel of destiny, Ouroboros. The trend of the dice of probability, being activated, surrounded by the information torrent, was forcibly suppressed, and it was even being repelled by the surrounding river of destiny, which greatly reduced Bernadette's pressure. Although this king of angels did not directly attack her, her situation became even worse. An illusory light, shaped like a giant python, abruptly emerged from the void, instantly transforming into a black shadow with countless black and white eyes splitting open. Those countless, distinct black and white eyes rotated rapidly, each condensing illusory and complex symbols, pouring an extreme amount of useless knowledge into the information torrent formed by Bernadette. The core ability of a Sequence 2 sage is the control and utilization of information, including but not limited to self-informatization. In such circumstances, with sufficient self-understanding and without disrupting the overall information balance, appropriate and non-conflicting mystical knowledge can be added as information to the corresponding information flow. Under permissible conditions, this ability can be upwardly compatible, meaning a sage can perfectly receive the power infusion from a hidden sage, temporarily gaining an increase in authority and an elevation in status. Aaron, who had long borrowed and read the Hermit card from Bernadette, was well aware of the peculiarities of this pathway. He had deliberately allowed Bernadette to leave residual hidden sage pollution in the river of destiny when handing over the dice of probability, precisely to use it as bait to lure out another big fish. Although he didn't catch that evil god, harvesting an angel from the Moses ascetic order was not a wasted trip. Watching the figure that suddenly appeared beside the information torrent Bernadette had become, effortlessly nullifying the subsequent attacks, and staring at him with interest, Aaron's countless, distinct black and white eyes suddenly contracted, and he decisively chose to retreat. But he was startled to find that at some unknown point, the space he was in had left the river of destiny, being segmented into a rule-bound cage from which he could not escape, completely isolated from the outside world, making it impossible even to use his final trump card, begging the great hidden sage to fully descend. The silver rings in the depths of Ouroboros's indifferent eyes paused slightly as he looked at the spot where Aaron had disappeared, his expression finally showing a slight change. He no longer waited for the future to be completely converged. His slender hand reached out directly towards the dice of probability, but was blocked by a spear of ancient design, stained with dark red blood from its tip to its hilt. Bernadette, who had recondensed her body, showed no signs of weakening in her aura. With Aaron's tacit permission, and empowered by the underlying rules of the core area of the entire divine battle relic, she broke free from the restraints of the river of destiny and, grasping the dice of probability beside her, prepared to leave this illusory long river. At the level of an angel, mystical reenactment truly embodies knowledge as power. Bernadette can directly draw power from the corresponding source of mystical knowledge through mystical reenactment. And the less known and circulated the corresponding mystical knowledge is, the more powerful the energy that can be drawn. And the fairy tales Roussel left her, originating from lost eras even older than the ancient epic, were Bernadette's most precious wealth, and one of her few means to confront the hidden sage, the pinnacle of her own sequence. Inside the black baby carriage, in the home of Dr. Alan Criss in North Backland, Will Ossepton's chubby infant face clearly scrunched up. He managed to turn over with difficulty, and with a rather resentful expression, he reached into the small pillow in the baby carriage and took out the amulet that hadn't even warmed up yet. Looking at the river of destiny, which was gradually converging in the future, Will Ossepton sighed. A drop of quicksilver-colored blood appeared on his palm and merged into the void. He then clutched the constantly refracting amulet tightly and complained in a low voice. "Seriously, I'm still just a baby." As his voice faded, a pure and clear light shone, completely enveloping Will Ossepton. In the outer area of the Divine War ruins, the continuously extending layered wings suddenly stiffened. A drop of quicksilver-colored blood broke through the blockade, and complex, strange symbols flew out of it, instantly forming a huge, illusory, scaleless snake. On the surface of this silvery white giant snake, dense patterns and symbols formed interconnected rotating wheels. The strange symbols around the wheels lit up simultaneously, and its scarlet eyes looked towards the perceptive Ouroboros. At the same time, it bit its own tail without hesitation. The surging river of destiny solidified for an instant, and Ouroboros's hand, reaching for Bernadette, was as if it had touched an invisible barrier. Looking at the information torrent, which was carrying the dice of probability, and about to completely break free from the river of destiny, a hint of displeasure flashed in Ouroboros's indifferent eyes. With his Beander characteristics, he could naturally see that the snake of destiny was merely a projection of power. He snorted coldly, not wasting time on Will Ossepton. Ouroboros manipulated the already converged portion of the Destiny's tributary to break through the stagnant river of destiny, blocking Will Ossepton. At the same time, the layered wings behind him closed. Bernadette's transformed information torrent immediately flowed backward in a bizarre manner, pulling the dice of probability, along with it, irresistibly approaching Ouroboros. Dong! Just then, a bell chime, as if from across history, rang out, echoing far across the empty river of destiny, interrupting Ouroboros's destiny restart. A pure and clear figure, like an angel but without wings, appeared. Micro-lights constantly flickered and jumped across its body, like the passage of time, and the ancient, mottled, giant clock phantom behind it slowly rotated. An indescribable, invisible torrent surged forth, sweeping Bernadette directly out of the river of destiny. The melodious, muffled bell chime rang again. On the gray-white and dark green intertwined clock face, a mottled hand appeared. And as that gray-white hand began to rotate in reverse, Ouroboros's expression subtly changed. He stared at the pure and clear light figure standing opposite him and spoke indifferently. "You actually dared to let your main body appear. Just now, a portion of his authority was stolen, and the originally converged destiny's tributary was grafted, deviating from its original expected trajectory. As a king of angels who had accommodated two snake of destiny characteristics, although he had not yet accommodated the uniqueness to become a certain symbol of this pathway, To influence and steal his authority, at least a complete Worm of Time main body would need to act with full power. Pallas, who had temporarily grafted the stolen authority to Will Osepton and successfully restricted Ouroboros, responded indifferently. My 1,000+ years of hiding were not without gains. To me, there is no essential difference between my main body and my clone. If that fellow comes, giving this body to him is of no great consequence. The silver-white long snake, with increasingly scarlet eyes, grew larger again, enveloping this section of the River of Destiny and temporarily isolating it from reality. Compared to Pallas, Will Osepton was clearly more nervous, constantly vigilant of Ouroboros' actions, and simultaneously wary of the one in the forsaken land of the gods. Freed from the restraints and returning to the core area of the Divine War ruins, the complex and chaotic information torrents immediately reconverged, intertwining to form Bernadette's figure. Thanks to Ouroboros' full suppression earlier, the milky white dice of probability in her hand appeared extremely quiet. The eye of peeping at the center of her brows rotated slightly, and Bernadette saw an old man standing in the dense darkness not far behind her, with a slightly hunched back, completely white hair, and dressed in a dark black clergyman's robe. Her spiritual warning seemed to have failed. Bernadette unhesitatingly thrust the spear of Longinus behind her. Patches of pure white, illusory feathers appeared, blocking the spreading corruption. Without any attempt to dodge, the old man standing in the darkness only raised his head after the spear of Longinus, stained with dark red blood, pierced through his body. His deep brown eyes remained profound and calm. The next second, his body disintegrated into a dark black mass, which quickly spread to the spear of Longinus, coating it with a viscous, pitch-black layer that corroded and broke it within a few breaths. This was merely a fallen shadow. Feeling the corrupt malice contained within it, Bernadette, who had already glimpsed the opponent's essence, decisively stopped the mystical reenactment and discarded the corresponding linked information flow. She frowned slightly, and the eye of peeping at the center of her brows detached from her body. Brilliant patterns lit up, once again locking onto a hunched clergyman. The viscous, pitch-black liquid then wriggled and twisted into a shadow, returning to his feet and becoming a spreading shadow. A solemn, aged voice, filled with extremely strong emotion, proclaimed in a tone like a pilgrim meeting a deity. I am Stiff, the Holy Word Angel, attendant beside the Lord's throne. I walk on behalf of the Lord in this ruined land, pursuing those blasphemers who defy destiny. As he spoke, the old man's figure suddenly expanded to 4 meters tall, and behind him, dark, illusory feathers emerged. They interwove with light and shadow, forming 4 pairs of deep yet sacred wings. Stiff, the Holy Word Angel. Bernadette narrowed her eyes, meeting the gaze of Stiff, who, despite still wearing a black clergyman's robe, had grown 4 pairs of angel wings. Her mind quickly recalled the experience shared by Cavendish Lancer in the previous Chaos Council, of confronting and fighting this sequence 2 profane presbyter in the forsaken land of the gods. Without giving Stiff another chance to speak and further elevate his level and power, Bernadette transformed back into an information torrent, weakening the influence of the profane presbyter's spirit word ability to the greatest extent in the form of an information creature. Being able to ambush an angel of the Moses ascetic order had already met Bernadette's expectations. Ouroboros, the greatest threat, was already held back. Now, she only needed to protect the dice of probability, and wait for Aaron to deal with that sage. With this thought, Bernadette decisively chose to avoid battle and delay, as her consumption was also enormous from escaping the River of Destiny, and the long-term burden of maintaining her mythical creature form was not simply something that could be eliminated by drawing power from the fairy tales of the Lost Era. Unlike the core area of the God War ruins, this space was like an abstract sketch. The vast and illusory information torrent, formed by the angel of the Moses ascetic order, instantly froze. As a high-level clairvoyant, any action targeting him would passively trigger a premonition of certain scenes or fragments. Yet, despite having already integrated a portion of the hidden sage's great will, he had still fallen into the trap without any warning, and the implications of this made him tremble. Without any further reservation, the illusory and transparent information torrent began to twist and expand. Cold, lashless eyes opened one by one, all looking at Aaron, who was wearing the star crown not far away. The gaze of those cold pupils brought forth a multitude of phantoms, which were various forms of knowledge given physical substance. These pieces of knowledge even vaguely converged into a scene, the protagonist of which was a dusty, mottled, and ancient stone slab. Various grotesque phantoms, like monsters from the depths of a nightmare, were indescribable in words, yet they all surged towards Aaron. The chaotic and jumbled knowledge spread like a plague, eroding the entire space. Using this moment of respite, the information torrent gradually coalesced into a figure wearing a black hood and a warlock's robe. He did not attempt to escape during this opportunity. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that it was too late. The moment he was isolated in this space, he had actively peered into his own destiny and interpreted the prophecy to gain enlightenment. He was too late to escape. A hint of madness flashed in the depths of his symbol-constructed eyes. A mask, seemingly forged from black gold, appeared in his hand, and he put it on his face without hesitation. This mask was asymmetrical, one side different from the other, like a toy haphazardly pieced together. It was very chaotic, yet it possessed an indescribable madness and majesty. This was one of the 3 sealed artifacts of 0 level currently possessed by the Moses Ascetic Order. The Moses Ascetic Order obtained it during the chaos of the War of the 4 Emperors and named it Solomon's Mask. Its essence was the Beander characteristic of a Black Emperor pathway sequence to Duke of Entropy. Amidst a muffled groan, the figure in the warlock's robe disintegrated and informationalized once more, turning into a vast, illusory, and transparent torrent. But even so, this information torrent was being torn apart by the black gold mask, swallowed bit by bit, yet the main structure that balanced his divinity remained intact. Illusory and chilling chewing sounds emanated from the mask. The enhancement brought by the Duke of Entropy's entropy increase completely activated the imprint bestowed by the hidden sage. An increasingly profound and terrifying aura spread, accompanied by bizarre and twisted numerical symbols, from which tiny specks of crimson seeped out. These crimson specks rapidly grew, about to converge and bring forth new life. The star crown on his head glimmered slightly. Aaron, with an indifferent gaze, glanced at the Moses Ascetic Order's angel, who was fighting like a cornered beast. A card suddenly appeared in his hand. The front of the card depicted an old man with a staff, holding a glass lamp, exploring alone. It was the Hermit card, originating from Bernadette. This space was constructed by him based on the angel-level authorities of space concealment, and the Hand of Order, combined with the nascent divine kingdom within the nation of disorder. Although inferior to the Mist Town, created by the Evernight goddess, who wielded the authority of secrets, it truly achieved complete isolation of the spirit world and reality. In this world constructed by his own rules, using the blasphemy card as a medium, he could temporarily interfere with, or even prohibit, certain Beander abilities. The Hermit card in his hand suddenly swelled, countless blank pages flipping, absorbing and sealing all the plague-like spreading knowledge. Casually segmenting this battlefield, Aaron raised an eyebrow as he watched the black gold mask and the crimson specks continuously merge within the information torrent. The historical projection of the sun-chasing scepter then emerged, followed by an extremely brilliant, scorching white radiance. The strangely structured special symbols, woven from numerous illusory and complex pieces of information, collapsed inch by inch, and countless pieces of information were annihilated. However, the trend of convergence did not completely cease. The information belonging to the hidden sage surged even more frantically, countless black and white eyeballs rapidly rotating, absorbing everything from this sage. Specks of crimson then climbed onto the black gold mask. Amidst vague calls of Great Mother, a crimson moon-like aura finally emerged, from which illusory and complex, summoning doors, cracked open. They seemed to connect to different places, behind which an indescribable terror was growing. As the true controller of this isolated place, Aaron felt it even more clearly. A power was attempting to forcibly descend and open a connection between this place and the outside world. Mother goddess of depravity. A cold sneer curled at his lips. Seeing that he had already probed out the existence behind the hidden sage, Aaron no longer held back and fully displayed the authority of a king of angels. Although not a complete hidden sage, it was definitely an imprint containing important information. Although he did not have the corresponding authority to analyze it, he presumed that the god of steam and machinery would be interested in this. The space, sketched like an abstract line drawing, was instantly replaced by an boundless dark gold world. The illusory chewing sounds abruptly ceased, and the crimson staining Solomon's mask was uncontrollably fading. With Aaron's current status, he could already use the high-level authority of the Black Emperor pathway through the Nation of Disorder, and with the additional blessing of the Black Emperor card, he had reached the threshold of an angel. Combined with the shackles of rules, Aaron seized the momentary disorder brought by the nascent divine kingdom's descent, directly, twisted, the ability of this 0 inches level sealed artifact, turning the entropy increase enhancement directly into entropy decrease, and amplified the negative effects of Solomon's mask. Amidst illusory and fluctuating roars, a blurry but upright terrifying feathered serpent, almost touching the illusory sky, avoided the blood-colored, summoning doors, and charged towards the information torrent composed of bizarre and twisted numerical symbols. This feathered serpent, a materialized projection of the Pale Emperor's characteristic power, continuously shrank and solidified. Pale flames rose in its eye sockets, and from the gaps in its dark green, almost black scales, seemingly pure white feathers emerged, transforming into prominent pale lines. The hidden sage, caught by the sudden eruption of Solomon's mosque's negative effects, sensed danger, but all attempts to pass through the feathered serpent's obstruction and merge with that crimson flow of information were annihilated. Even the concept of death itself would wither and vanish, naturally including the conceptualized information flow. Ignoring the hidden sage's delirious ravings, Aaron's thoughts stirred, and the order that constructed this isolated space surged, transforming into a barrier that once again separated the torrent of information gradually dying in death and the feathered serpent formed from the Pale Emperor's Beander characteristic. Aaron sensed the outside world, especially the intersection of the god of combat's ruins and the forsaken land of the gods, and at the same time decisively through the historical projection of the scepter of the sun, which he had been charging towards that crimson moonlight. Unlike before, the truncest brass book within the Nation of Disorder simultaneously began to flip, and the entire dark gold world showed a clear, boiling. Perceiving the power contained within the brilliant light, that crimson expanse seemed to have a life of its own. Guided by some ineffable power, it gathered and outlined various evil and defiled symbols, and an unimaginable tide of pollution emanated like a flood. But this was, after all, within the barrier. After being isolated by the nascent god kingdom, although this power was of an extremely high sequence, it was ultimately like rootless duckweed. In an instant, a blazing, dazzling sun appeared in this silently rendered dark gold world, causing all the bloody hues to rapidly recede. Outside this world, on the orbiting moon, a crimson ocean flowed, submerging everything, as if encompassing and digesting this giant satellite. The light on the surface of the red moon pulsed and contracted, and the bloody ocean rapidly condensed towards the center, constantly piling up, eventually forming a blood-red phantom whose specific appearance could not be clearly seen. This phantom was countless times larger than the moon, with countless eyes. It looked down at the blue planet, its chilling gaze fixed on the various areas that were lighting up one by one on the world barrier. In the more distant cosmos, the brown star, orange star, scarlet star, gold star, and blue star simultaneously flickered, as if blinking. North continent, Amantha Mountains. Illusory black threads snapped one by one under the morning light, and all spiritual beings in this area completely fell into silence. The storm of light subsided, and the silver knight, covered in silver-white armor, stood silently on the collapsed hill. Complex dark green symbols emerged in the depths of his eyes. After scanning his surroundings, the heavy, broadsword of dawn in his hand, which seemed to be condensed from light, slowly dissipated. Northwest of the Amantha Mountains, at the source of the Tassoc River, a valley in the Murmansk Mountains. Klein coughed up a mouthful of blood mixed with light particles, looking somewhat disheveled. After a long while, he reached out and collected the few inactive spirit worms, entangled by silver-white arcs of light, from his blood. Behind him, Panatia and Yegor Einhorn were in an even more miserable state, especially the latter. As an iron-blooded knight whose physical strength was enough to stand out among many demigods, his chest had now been pierced through. Ignoring his own injuries, Klein somewhat painedly checked his two great demigod puppets. After a moment, he grinned and silently exhaled. Is this Sequence 3 Silver Knight? Truly terrifying. After leaving the quiet cathedral, he had been wandering the battlefield, and while the potion feedback from the terrifying horror directly experienced by demigods was considerable, the feedback from a battlefield with tens of thousands of soldiers and a far higher proportion of beyonders than usual was no less impressive. Especially since his two demigod puppets generating horror also allowed Klein, the bizarro sorcerer, to digest his potion. In such a short time, his potion digestion progress had surpassed that of his time in Mist Town. It was just a pity that a tall tree catches the wind, directly attracting a certain Sequence 3 Archbishop of the God of Combat Church, whose concealed malice severely wounded Klein. Fortunately, his two demigod puppets had always been by his side. He immediately transferred the damage he sustained to the iron-blooded knight and escaped the battlefield at the cost of abandoning his other puppets. As for whether his whereabouts would be exposed, Klein was not too worried about it, because the bizarro sorcerer possessed a certain concealment ability. This was also one of the special reasons why he could restrain the gray fog's blessing upon him after reaching Sequence 4. As Klein was contemplating where to continue digesting his potion, a strange palpitation arose in his heart. The murmuring sound, which he could only hear when traversing the gray fog to Saphira Castle, suddenly echoed in his ears, causing him to instinctively look up at the sky. The layered clouds of the night had completely dispersed, and a huge, bright moon obscured all the starlight. The color of this moon was no longer the common crimson, it was pure white, exceptionally bright. Klein stood frozen in place, not even bothering with the incessant murmuring in his ears, staring blankly at the silver moon, just like when he first awoke in this world and witnessed that crimson moon. Neither normal textbooks in human society nor mysticism-related books within the churches had any record of such a moon. Aside from the common crescent and full moons, and the occasional blood moon, the moon had never shown such a change, at least not since the fifth epoch, in these more than 1300 years, absolutely not. Looking at the silver moon that overlapped with the memory of his homeland, Klein's heart trembled slightly, filled with an inexplicable sense of horror. Deep within the God of Combat's ruins, the Angel of Holy Word, Steve, stopped. His three heads turned simultaneously, and his 6 dark brown eyes looked up at the sky, seeing the bloody figure observing everything from behind the barrier. As a complete mythical creature, he experienced that sense of horror after a long time. Seemingly realizing something, or perhaps receiving a certain will, he no longer pursued Bernadette, who was fleeing in all directions. This chaotic area, divided by various residual divine powers, became orderly in the next second. From the rippling void, Aaron emerged, gripping silver-white or crimson light clusters in each hand, and his pressure, far exceeding that of an ordinary angel, halted the chaotic battle. The Mask of Solomon, which was essentially a Sequence 2 Duke of Entropy Beander characteristic, and the Pale Emperor's Beander characteristic, which showed signs of being activated, had already been retrieved by him into the Nation of Disorder. As for this Sage Beander characteristic containing the Hidden Sage's information imprint and the last remnants of the Mother Goddess of Depravity's pollution, he did not immediately throw them into the God Kingdom, lest the unruly genie cause trouble while his main body was absent. The illusory torrent of information rapidly converged. Bernadette's expression could not hide her exhaustion, and the dice of probability in her hand trembled uneasily, extremely repulsed by the crimson mass approaching Aaron's hand. Aaron glanced indifferently at the bloody figure in the cosmos, then raised his hand and made a grasping motion. Chains of order bound the dice of probability, dragging it to his side. Steve stood quietly nearby, silently watching all of this, neither obstructing nor worrying about being attacked. The space beside him twisted, and a bewildered Rejot appeared. This Fate Counselor had successfully advanced to Sequence 3 Chaoswalker. Aaron then directly threw the dice of probability, after intimidating it, to him, before looking at the illusory river of fate. Feeling the trembling auras around him, Richard's expression changed slightly, and he didn't bother to stabilize his own state, grabbing the dice of probability that floated in front of him. After using his Chaoswalker ability to disrupt his own fate, he didn't dare to stay here any longer. After bowing to Aaron, he stepped into the door of exile, prepared for him. Without needing to divert attention to guard that uniqueness, Bernadette's spiritual burden was mostly lifted. She was looking at her originally empty palm with some surprise. Light gathered there, forming a miniature book with strange patterns and peculiar numerical symbols. The Russell on the book's cover, holding a glass lamp and exploring alone, became even more vivid, and the aura emanating from it was completely different from the original pure blasphemy slate. Most of the information torrent from the Sage of the Moses Ascetic Order, who had obtained the Hidden Sage's blessing and possessed part of the Knowledge Emperor's authority, was absorbed by this hermit card. Abstract knowledge was endowed with substantial power. Before this power is exhausted, this blasphemy slate can be completely regarded as a complete sealed artifact of Sequence 0, and one with extremely few side effects. Knowing that this was a reward specifically left for her, Bernadette nodded slightly and put it away. Although she was not yet sure how great the Moses Ascetic Order's loss was this time, at the very least, an angel had fallen. It was impossible for them to remain unresponsive next. Although this hermit card was a bit redundant for her, it could be given to Katlia for self-defense. A stream of light flashed across the crown of stars, and Aaron smoothed out all traces. The river of fate, which was invisible to the naked eye, finally changed. The Ouroboros, which encircled that section of the river of fate like a wheel, slowly disintegrated into pure light particles, disappearing into the suddenly rushing, rugged long river. Streaks of light permeated through, forming illusory, overlapping pure wings that once again covered the entire section of the river of fate. The Holy Word Angel, Stiff, who had been silently closing his eyes since Aaron appeared, finally reacted. The 4 pairs of deep but sacred wings on his back flapped, and his figure disappeared, leaving only a few dark, illusory feathers that transformed into viscous liquid droplets amidst the interplay of light and shadow. Having dispelled his mythical creature form, the slightly disheveled figure of Pales appeared. He and Bernadette stood on either side behind Aaron, both staring at the opposite side with solemn expressions. The Angel of Fate, Ouroboros, with his silver waist-length hair, scanned all the angels present with a somewhat indifferent expression, including Stiff who had already arrived beside him. A suppressed, stagnant atmosphere permeated the area. Wonderful. Truly wonderful. A rather playful teasing voice accompanied by crisp applause broke the somewhat tense standoff, attracting everyone's attention. In the edge region of the Divine Battle Ruins, on an island surrounded by a golden ocean, a transcendent creature that had fortunately survived ignored the focus of those terrifying gazes and calmly took out a crystal-like monocle from the void, slowly clipping it into his right eye socket. During this process, his figure wriggled and twisted, transforming into Aemon, wearing a pointed soft cap. The blasphemer pinched the monocle over his right eye and curled his lips. Sensing the change in order, Aaron's expression remained unchanged. He had already confirmed that only a clone had arrived, and he terminated the decree of no teleportation without permission. Without the obstruction of order, Amon's lips curved into a smile. In a few breaths, his figure arrived at the core area of the Divine Battle Ruins, meeting those naked gazes, and clicked his tongue. "You all don't seem to welcome me. You know that much," Aaron silently replied in his heart, his expression unchanged on the surface, but part of his consciousness had already returned to the nation of disorder. Using the true creator's higher-level true vision and this Aemon clone as a medium, he scanned the entire Divine Battle Ruins and the more outer Sonia Sea. As is well known, Amons tend to appear in groups. When one Aemon appears, it often means there is at least a group nearby. The wings covering the long river of fate retracted. Ouroboros reacted even more obviously than Eren, completely ignoring this Aemon clone, not even having the desire to respond. As if accepting this failure, at his feet, a winding, illusory, shimmering river extended to the deepest part of the divine battle ruins, stopping before that magnificent, epic, and mythical building. Ignoring Aemon, Ouroboros led Stiff to the dark blue giant hall, which was covered with symmetrical symbols, emblems, and patterns, and prayed devoutly. The Lord who created everything. The master behind the veil of shadows. The fallen self-nature of all living beings. As soon as the complete honorific name fell, the ground of this magnificent building suddenly trembled, slowly splitting open left and right, revealing a deep crack whose bottom could not be seen. Bernadette's pupils behind Eren contracted slightly. Just as she was about to use her eye of peeping to look at the legendary forsaken land of the gods, she hesitated and stopped the thought. Compared to the adventurous Bernadette, Pales's expression remained unusually serious and highly vigilant from beginning to end, especially after feeling Amon's naked scrutiny. Only when everything returned to calm did Eren's tense nerves relax slightly, but then his brows furrowed slightly, somewhat confused as to why the true creator had no reaction at all. Withdrawing his playful gaze from the stiff-faced Pales, Aemon looked at Eren, seemingly guessing the doubt in his mind, and chuckled. Tisk, unless you directly break into the forsaken land of the gods, that guy doesn't have time to deal with you right now. Although he was somewhat curious about what had happened, seeing Aemon deliberately stop halfway through his sentence, Eren decided not to indulge him. After temporarily handing over the sealed sage characteristic to Bernadette, chains of order dragged out almonds from various corners of the divine battle ruins. Seeing the densely packed Aemon clones, each with different expressions and even arguing with each other, Bernadette, who was seeing this scene for the first time, her eye twitched slightly, and she couldn't help but glance at Pales beside her. Understanding the meaning contained in that look, Pales was silent for a moment, then explained in a strange tone. This is his unique, habit. Not wanting to bother with Amon's bad taste, Eren moved his thoughts, crushing all the most ordinary clones he had found later, and then looked back at the first, and now only remaining, Aemon. Can you tell me your purpose now? Shrugging indifferently, Amon's smile remained. You know what I want, and I know what you want to do, and coincidentally, I can help you get what you want, and you can help me get what I want. In other words, we can at least reach an agreement in some aspects. At least I have never revealed your identity to those who are interested in you, have I not? Listening to the veiled threat in the jibe, Eren's eyes dangerously narrowed. He glanced at Pales, whose expression had subtly changed, and without avoiding the subject, responded indifferently. If you obtain the last portion of the Worm of Time characteristic, wouldn't Adam be afraid that his ascension ritual would be usurped by you? Shrugging his shoulders with a playful expression, Aemon said to Pales with a peculiar smile. That's why only a clone of mine came. Eren didn't bother to discern whether this was a deceptive attempt to cover up. At worst, he would have Pales separate the Worm of Time characteristic and throw it directly into the Nation of Disorder. Without his permission, this blasphemer would never achieve error. However, doing so would be tantamount to tearing off the facade, breaking the tacit understanding between Adam and the Evernight goddess regarding the candidate for the Lord of the Mysteries. He naturally wouldn't take the initiative to do it. Since that was the case, it was better to maximize the benefits. Ignoring the somewhat hostile attitude of the other party, Aemon slightly raised his head, looking at the gradually calming astral world and the dissipating crimson figure beyond the barrier. His playful smile receded, replaced by a rare seriousness. With your current Beander pathway, you should be very clear that above Sequence 0 are outer deities. And to become an outer deity, in addition to gathering the uniqueness of neighboring pathways and at least one Sequence 1 characteristic, there is one more indispensable item. For example, Saphira Castle, or Chaos Sea. Before Eren could respond, Amon's lips curled into a meaningful smile as he added. Or like the Nation of Disorder on you. Tisk. After the Western continent was sealed, it's rare to see someone in the outside world capable of fusing a complete Saphira. No wonder that fanatic values you so much. Aaron frowned imperceptibly, suddenly unsure if this guy had learned some secret from Adam. After all, he, who didn't even have an angel meander pathway, was able to persevere through several epochs of integration with the Nation of Disorder. Apart from his soul being a true outsider, unaffected by the initial imprint's revival, the most crucial factor was the gifts from the two pillar-level outer deities, Celestial Worthy and God Almighty, based on their mutual goal of keeping each other suppressed. And the ancient sun god, using Adam as an alias, had truly experienced the awakening of God Almighty within him. Based on the authority of omniscience and omnipotence and a certain degree of spiritual fusion, it was not surprising for him to know some of God Almighty's arrangements. Aaron pondered the risk of meeting this fellow countryman, before Adam achieved visionary, while maintaining his usual expression. Considering that with the mother goddess of depravity's retreat, the gaze of the gods in the astral world could fall on this forsaken land at any time, Aaron avoided the topic and, according to the conditions he had previously discussed with Pales, proactively spoke. One worm of time characteristic for one Trojan horse of destiny characteristic and one weather warlock characteristic. If you agree, we can sign the contract now. The Trojan horse of destiny characteristic was a gift Pales had left for Morbid, and also the foundation for the future revival of the Zoroast family. This world-sweeping war was the fastest opportunity for the Red Priest pathway to quickly digest potions and advance. If there were additional weather warlock characteristics, it wouldn't be impossible to create another angel in a short time. As for the weather warlock characteristic obtained in Bansi Harbor, Aaron planned to reserve it for his father, Gusmanwell, whose war bishop potion was about to be completely digested. Eamon adjusted the monocle on his right eye, glanced at Pales, who had tacitly agreed, and clicked his tongue. I thought you would ask me to deal with George III, or that crippled fellow from Castia. The Trojan horse of destiny isn't difficult, but unfortunately, you just missed a weather warlock characteristic. Missed? Aaron frowned. Before he could press further, he saw Amon's lips curl into a smile, but his body was gradually disintegrating, leaving only an echoing voice. I agree to your terms. I look forward to our next meeting. Almost at the instant Eamon disintegrated, an arm entirely composed of twisted vines reached out from the chaotic spirit world, only to grasp a 12-segment worm of time. An invisible, chilling wind swept by, and Astolfo's body stretched open the spirit world. Behind him, strange creatures hung from the twisted vines, a significant number of them bearing faint circular marks on their right eyes. Just by being swept by those blood-red eyes, Bernadette felt a stinging pain deep within her spiritual body. The oppressive feeling, comparable to Ouroboros, made him hold his breath, another king of angels. Deep within the forsaken land of the gods, at the peak of a majestic and continuous mountain range, stood a gigantic cross, existing between reality and illusion. There, a blurred figure, shrouded in a faint shadow, hung upside down. Several ancient wooden stakes pierced his body, nailing him to the cross. And at the base of the cross, the place with the densest aura of depravity, a figure stood at this moment. Blood-red hair casually draped over blood-soaked black armor, and a flag-like red mark on his glabella was vividly crimson, clearly the Red Angel Medici. However, unlike before, the two deep, bone-visible putrid wounds on his face had healed, leaving only mouth-like scars. At this moment, his aura was no longer inferior to an angel. A winding, illusory river, shimmering with light, stopped at the base of the mountain range. Ouroboros ascended towards the mountaintop with an indifferent expression, while Stiff remained in place, sitting devoutly and praying in a low voice. In a few breaths, Ouroboros arrived at the base of the cross. He glanced at Medici, who had his eyes tightly closed, and took out a bronze patinated cross with thorns from his linen robe. Almost simultaneously, the inverted figure on the giant cross suddenly faded, spreading into a curtain of shadow that connected the sky above and the earth below. Behind the curtain, a pair of cold eyes seemed to be watching the entire world. The next second, the shadow curtain split open, revealing a dark, lightless void within, where the faint sound of illusory tides echoed. Under the influence of the power seeping from the chaos sea, the bronze patinated cross instantly disintegrated. Infinite light enveloped the golden blood droplet, which radiated light and heat, gradually transforming into a figure composed of pure light. From the cold eyes behind the curtain, a dark, dense shadow surged out, merging with the radiant figure into the flag-like mark on Medici's glabella. Two terrifying wills, opposing yet intertwined, surged within Medici's body. Utilizing the true creator's own authority of hurting, they brought the corruption within Medici's body to a balance, no longer being unilaterally assimilated by the Red Priest uniqueness. Ouroboros stood quietly nearby, his layered wings obscuring this mountain range, preventing the terrifying anomaly from affecting the forsaken land of the gods. With the true creator's tacit approval, the radiant wings originating from Ouroboros replaced the lightning that occasionally tore through the night, and the previously sky-obscuring curtain of shadows also collapsed, transforming back into the inverted cross suspended between reality and illusion. Hysterical or gloomy and deranged whispers emanated from Medici's body, but they quickly vanished into nothingness along with the rusty, bloody smell that permeated the mountaintop. His eyes, flashing with silver arcs of electricity, suddenly opened. The Red Angel evil spirit, or more accurately, the former, War Angel, Medici, gazed distractedly at the mountain range and the continuous giant royal court in the distance. After a long while, the corners of his mouth curved upwards. He drew a cross on his chest, bowed to the illusory figure burdened with sin, and then, without further delay, turned with firm steps towards the foot of the mountain, towards the cluster of buildings where the resplendent twilight was solidified. He had already returned to the angel rank, and with the true creator's help, he had re-established balance by leveraging the mutual antagonism of several high-ranking contaminations within his body. To some extent, he was now a spiritual patchwork monster, a meld of numerous wills, and thanks to Adam's help, Medici's will held absolute dominance, even allowing him to use 001 to a limited extent. Pausing slightly, Medici turned his head to glance at Angel of Fate, Ouroboros, who was dressed in a simple linen robe with silver waist-length hair. He clicked his tongue and said in a flippant tone, "Let me state this up front, the Iron and Blood Cross Order has nothing to do with me. That was all Amon's doing. Tisk, that little raven insisted on snatching a weather warlock characteristic to give to me as payment for my past guidance. I couldn't very well refuse." Ouroboros, on one side of the mountaintop, nodded with a slightly indifferent expression and calmly replied, "This is a necessary sacrifice." Medici's mouth twitched violently. Although he knew that given this guy's personality, this statement wasn't directed at him, he still felt inexplicably offended and scoffed, losing the desire to continue the conversation. Silently watching Medici leave the range of the cycle of fate, Ouroboros finally reminded him. The birth of a Red Priest is bound to be accompanied by competition, chaos, and disaster. Only through multi-party contention can a Red Priest emerge in the shortest time and in the best way. If only you walk this pathway, it will not go smoothly. This is the consensus of the Lord and the gods, but it doesn't mean the primordial demoness will abide by this consensus. West Balam, Star Plateau, a hidden city built against the mountains. This was originally a secret base where the Highland Resistance Army buried the remains of successive pharaohs, but it has now become the headquarters of the ascetic order. After and top-down purge, the Highland Resistance Army was renamed the Restoration Army and placed under the governance of the ascetic order in a theocratic form, thoroughly solidifying its religious foundation. The altars previously used for bloody sacrifices had disappeared, replaced by strange statues. Their hands were tied behind their backs, or their bodies were wrapped in thorny roses, or they were shaped like mummies, directly conveying a sense of restraint. Above the city, with its peculiar style, a rift opened in a barrier formed by the twisted manifestation of curses, and several figures emerged from the void. Bernadette observed the low sequence beyonders of the ascetic order below, who were covered in black fur but had not been overwhelmed by their inherent murderous and bloodthirsty desires, striving to maintain their true selves. She mused for a few seconds before speaking. Our previously arranged isolation array is still effective. Even the influence from the recent blood moon anomaly didn't cause them to lose control. If it were just a normal full moon, the impact would be even smaller. Astorful nodded. After mending the rift behind him, he led several angels into the depths of the city, into an ancient, simple stone palace. Renette Tinacare, who had already fully repaired her body, was here teaching Sharon, who had just been appointed Highland Kingdom Regent, to become familiar with the Disciple of Silence, Beander abilities. Looking at Sharon, who had replaced her small black soft cap with a more majestic pharaoh's crown, and Miss Messenger, who had returned to a normal human state, Aaron felt a sense of melancholy that things were no longer what they used to be. But he said no more, motioning for Renette Tinacare to send Sharon away. Then he leaned back in the stone chair and looked at Astorful, asking. After accommodating that abomination from Sua, your rank has reached that of a king of angels. Can you now confirm the location of the bound god? The intertwining evil vines swayed gently. Astorful's slightly ugly face's lips moved, and a hoarse, hollow voice echoed directly in everyone's spiritual bodies. The bound god and I share the same origin. Before the barrier completely collapses, even if there is a higher ranked power obscuring it, I can confirm that he is within a forgotten historical fog. Historical fog, ah. Aaron nodded thoughtfully, recalling the fruitless search at the Rose School of Thought's headquarters last time. He estimated that the King of Curses, Balanka, who had received a boon and forcibly advanced across pathways to become the beauty goddess, was likely also hidden there. Considering that the mother goddess of depravity might have already intervened in this matter, Aaron, though urgent, remained calm. The opportunity to kill Sua before was thanks to Adam blocking the pressure from beyond the barrier at a crucial moment, coupled with a dismissive attitude, which prevented those who had secretly pledged allegiance to the outer gods from taking action in time. After a moment of contemplation, a golden token appeared in Aaron's hand, Rissel's last gift to Bonneva. After stripping away the fragments of the Night Emperor's divine kingdom from it, he had kept it. Even though Rissel had fallen, the memory imbued with power was still the most special anchor, capable of awakening Bonneva's humanity. Regaining hold of the sage characteristic containing the residual information of the hidden sage, which he had previously entrusted to Bernadette for safekeeping, Aaron smiled at Bernadette, whose expression shifted slightly, and said, "Perhaps I can help your brother regain his freedom. An angel-level craftsman, Tisk, coupled with Rissel's favor, it's worth the risk." Staring at the two items in Aaron's hands, Bernadette froze for a moment, vaguely guessing something. Her pupils constricted, and she urgently pressed. "What do you need me to do?" Tossing the token containing part of Bonneva's humanity to Bernadette, Aaron couldn't help but smile, thinking of Rissel's possible reaction. "Since I promised you I'd go see Rissel, naturally, the whole family will go together. What you need to do is find a way to get Bonneva to temporarily leave the Steam Church's headquarters. There, we won't have the capital to negotiate. As for what happens after that, Astorful and I can handle it." For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.